One. Very good. It is Tuesday, December 19th, 2023. It's 9 a.m., and this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Fort Myers Beach Local Planning Agency. If you would all please stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the invocation this morning is just to wish you all and everyone listening a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, whatever you're going to be celebrating this holiday spirit. We hope that you will be safe in your travels and enjoy your families and friends. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. All members are present today except for Don Suddeth, who would like to participate by phone because of extraordinary circumstances. May I have a motion to approve Don's participation via phone?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. The second thing I'd like to do before we move forward, I've had a request on the second variance, number B, to be put ahead of the TPI ordinance amendment. Is there any objection to that? Hearing no objection, we'll move B to A. Next item is approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes as they were distributed or with any corrections? I had too much
Madam
coffee.
Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
We did have, within your minutes, included with them is the disclosure of a conflict of interest that board member Vaness filed, and it was just because there was a special gain or loss to one of his clients on
That was
agenda
last-
item C, yes.
Yes, in the last
And
one.
that is in your minutes, just
Yes,
to
it
bring your
is.
attention to that.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on this?
No discussion.
Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Dawn. Oh, yeah.
Delayed.
The next item is public comment. This is public comment outside of the public hearings. Is there anybody who has public comment to make?
I have one signed up, Anita.
Yes, Dale.
Yep.
Is that who
Dale.
you have signed up?
I do. Dale Bonema.
Season's greetings.
Season's greetings.
Dale and Jay Bonema. We live on Matanzas Court. We're across from Moss Marina. And there's been a lot of talk about Moss Marina and their big
Dale,
plans.
could you hold on? Yeah, there you go.
Yes. And regarding that, we just want to point out some things very quickly here, and that is that the Moss Marina application for that huge resort, it's nothing like and shouldn't be compared to Margaritaville. And the reason for that is the Margaritaville property was long established as retail with hotels on the Gulf, a McDonald's with a drive-through, a bar, a liquor store, and it's also, of course, located on the boulevard and two heavily traveled roads. So the Moss Marina property is zoned commercial marina with limited uses. It's a pretty long reach to develop that property into multiple hotels, restaurants, and bars. In past years, they probably generated 30 vehicles a day back there, maybe 50. But that resort will generate probably 1,000 vehicles a day. And we've lived there 10 years, and they've been a good neighbor until this year when they allowed the Rude Shrimp to set up on their property in June. And since then, we have been hammered with live music 5 or 6 days a week. When we complained to Moss Marina, the manager suggested we put earplugs in and have a drink. So the Rude Shrimp has proven to be a horrible, inconsiderate neighbor. They chose to move to Moss Marina. They were deceptive when they applied to the town to set up at that new location. They actually applied for just a restaurant food truck, but are now operating a bar with outdoor entertainment. So we would just request that you oppose any application for a consumption on premises, and please oppose any request for any outdoor music or entertainment. Thank you.
Thank you both
Thank
very
you. Merry
much.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, too. Is there anyone else who has public comment to make outside of the public hearings? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment. Next item on the agenda will be our first public hearing, which is number B. We've moved ahead. Variance 202-30212, 6642 Estero Boulevard. I'm going to go to this lovely script we have now. So the following 4 items on our agenda are public hearings of various land use requests. They differ from legislative actions. They are quasi-judicial in nature. I'll let Nancy explain that. Nancy, are we going to have to explain this at every single hearing juncture?
We recommend that we do.
Okay, go
And
ahead
the
then.
reason for that is in the event that should there be an appeal of any of them, the public as well as the applicant is aware of the unique features of a quasi-judicial.
Okay.
So as your chair has pointed out, these are quasi-judicial in nature rather than legislative. And as a result, we have to comply with some procedural requirements that have been established in Florida law and in our land development code. These proceedings, they're quasi-judicial, meaning that they're less formal than proceedings before a circuit court, but they are more formal than legislative meetings where other matters come before the LPA as well as the town council. The bottom line is that the basic standards of due process will be adhered to, requiring certain notices, the application of the correct standards, and the decisions made today based on competent and substantial evidence that is presented to the LPA either in written form or through oral testimony. Once this evidence is presented, the LPA will then evaluate the testimony for each item and draw a conclusion regarding whether the criteria for that particular land use matter or state law has been satisfied. So pure speculation or opinion that is not based on competent facts should not and cannot be legally considered by the LPA in evaluating an agenda item as to whether or not the criteria has been satisfied. So testimony by individuals who are professionals and are qualified as experts in a particular area, the Florida courts have considered that to be competent evidence. However, also testimony by neighbors and residents in the community who have fact-based information such as minutes, surveys, engineering reports, or testimony based on their personal observations or knowledge. The courts have considered that to be competent substantial evidence. If you intend to speak, please keep these guidelines in mind. When you come forward, can you please state your name clearly for the record and whether or not you have been sworn in, your qualifications or your interest in the agenda item. And again, it's for the purposes of creating a record of the proceeding. And for purposes of efficiency, we would like to go ahead and dispose of a few what we call housekeeping matters that are part of due process considerations. And the first one is I will be asking the town clerk, have all the matters been properly advertised?
Yes, they have.
Okay. Noticed. Excuse me. Noticed, properly noticed. Also, right now, if any LPA member has a conflict of interest that would prohibit them from voting under Florida law on any of these items, we would like you to go ahead and disclose that at this time, just for purposes of efficiency. So it would be any conflicts that would prohibit you from rendering a fair and impartial decision on the matter.
Does anyone have any conflicts? Doug?
No, ma'am.
Patrick?
None.
Jane?
I just want to clarify, on 21-391 Widgeon Terrace, I have sold that property twice.
And that
But I
was in
have
the
no
past,
interest,
so
yes.
you have no income or any,
No interest.
okay.
Okay. Jim, any conflicts?
No conflict.
How about you, Scott?
Yes, I do. I'm going to recuse myself from the TPI hearing. I manage 3 lofts directly across the street, and I feel at this time it's not appropriate that I render a vote.
Okay, and so what Florida law requires is subsequent to the disclosure that the Form 8B be completed, and I think he's already done that, and that form will be provided to the clerk and added to the minutes for the next meeting. At this point, it is time to...
By the way, Nancy, I have no conflicts,
Thank you.
at least in this scenario. And Dawn has
And
no...
Dawn has no conflicts, okay.
Don does have a disclosure.
Dawn,
I'd like to just disclose that I did own the property at 21391 Widgeon Terrace. Sold it 2.5 years ago.
Okay, and again, there's no current income or any type of purchase money financing or any association with that property?
Correct.
Okay.
thank you, Dawn.
So the next step, again, for the formalities associated with due process concerns, is we want to make sure that the testimony that is provided is credible. And for that reason, anyone who will be testifying today will be sworn in. So I'll defer to the town clerk to go ahead and ask anyone who is going to give testimony. Once it starts, it's hard to stop. To please rise.
And Nancy, this is for any and all of the hearings.
And
All 4 hearings. If you're going to give testimony, Bob, aren't you going to give, you're not? Okay. Okay. So if nobody has, go ahead, Nancy.
Okay.
Amy?
Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. All parties have been sworn.
Thank you all.
Okay, so as our chair has indicated, the first item of the quasi-judicial matters on your agenda will be the request for variance number 2023-0212, which is 6642 Estero Boulevard. The purpose of the variance is to allow an elevated emergency generator closer to the Estero Boulevard street right-of-way line than the principal building for the property located at the address that I mentioned. Madam Chair, the first item would be to have any disclosure of
Yes.
ex parte.
Is there any ex parte, Scott?
No.
How about you, Jim?
No.
I have none. Jane?
none.
None.
Patrick?
None.
Doug?
None.
No ex parte.
Dawn?
Dawn? None. Okay. Nancy?
Okay. So all those who will be presenting, can you just let us know who is out there that's going to be presenting on this item? So we have 2.
Kara
and-
Stewart, Kurt
and
Brenner,
staff.
Sarah Prost.
Okay. So we would begin with staff, who Sarah Prost has already been qualified as an expert by the LPA, and this is based on her education and experience. Her expertise is in the area of land use, planning, and development in the city of Fort Myers Beach. The others who indicated they want to speak, would you like to be qualified as an expert at this time?
Kara Stewart already has been
Kara
qualified.
Stewart has also
Yes.
been qualified as an expert in land use planning in the city of, or the town of Fort Myers Beach. Okay.
And all throughout the land.
And, okay. All right. And so with that said, did the property owner, the applicant, receive a copy of the agenda backup materials? These are materials that have been presented to the LPA for their review prior to the
They are
meeting.
nodding in the affirmative.
Okay. And are there any questions regarding any of the ex parte disclosures, which we didn't
There were
have
none.
any? So, Sarah, did you want to begin, or should we have the applicants?
Usually the
I can
staff
begin.
begins, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. Point Estero Condominium Association is requesting a variance from Section 34-1174B to allow an elevated generator forward of the primary structure. The parcel is zoned residential multifamily, which allows recreational facilities such as pools, shuffleboards, and other courts forward of the primary structure with an approved site plan. However, because this is not a recreational facility, a variance must be approved for the structure. Prior to Ian, the condominium generator was located on the ground floor of the primary structure. The primary structure is approximately 250 feet from Estero Boulevard. The proposed generator will be 59 feet from the street property line and 23 feet from the side property line. The structure will be elevated 13 feet above sea level and located in the parking lot adjacent to the tennis courts. To make the generator less noticeable, the applicant has proposed the access stairs opposite of the street side, and they have agreed to a condition to include screening between the structure and the street. While there is room on the parcel to place the generator behind the facade of the primary structure, the required elevation of the generator would be 21 feet above sea level because it would be seaward of the 1991 CCCL. The proposed location of the elevated generator is landward of the 1991 CCCL, which will allow the structure to be 8 feet lower than if it were seaward of the CCCL. Staff is available for any questions you may have, and the applicant's agent is also here.
Just to put on the record for the public, CCCL is Coastal Construction Control Line.
Thank you. My apologies.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I just always get an email about why do you have to use all the acronyms? Well, for very obvious reasons there. Okay, thank you. Questions for staff? Anyone? Doug, anything?
Would the generator have like a soundproof enclosure or something like that to mitigate noise?
I don't believe that that's proposed at this time. It is a good distance from any other structure. The closest thing that will, so it's 24 feet from the side property line with the neighboring condominium, but that is actually a parking lot there. So it seems as if it won't be close enough to have a noise impact on any surrounding properties. But they are not proposing at this time.
But it would probably be in some sort of weatherproof enclosure, right?
I would assume so. I haven't asked for the details of the actual structure.
Doug, we can follow up with the applicant on that.
Yeah, I would imagine they'd want to have a weatherproof and soundproof enclosure anyway, but.
Yeah, we would have, I mean, the applicant is here, and that might be a good question for them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other, Jane, you have a question?
Any comments from Sanderac as far as they're concerned since they were noticed?
None.
Jane, pull your microphone to you. 'cause
And I thought I had
Welcome.
received an email of support, but last night, as I was looking through my emails, I couldn't find it, so. but
Okay,
no-
other
no
questions? Jim,
concerns.
Scott?
No, ma'am.
Nothing. Okay, thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Kara, or Kurt, who's going to? If you could, Kara, also when you're speaking, address Doug's question.
Sure. Kara Stewart, representing the property owners at 6642 Estero Boulevard. The enclosure itself is not necessarily weatherproof. It is a slatted structure that will muffle the sound. The generator location that we chose was chosen very particular for that purpose, and we figured that the further away it would be from any existing condo owners, any neighbors, would be the most effective place to locate it. So that's hence where it is right now. In addition, as Sarah was mentioning, it's a unique situation. The property in the rear behind the building, our only other option would be to place it, to not need this variance, would be behind the building. That is very close to the 1978 Coastal Construction Control Line also, hence the location that we chose. Any questions?
Yeah, I think the location's good. I was just wondering.
Thank you.
Anything else you have to present?
No.
Any questions for Kara on this? Kara, I'm guessing that the property owner will open the public comment in just a minute. I'm guessing that the property is okay with the condition for the screening.
Correct.
It's already, okay?
Correct.
Kurt, did you want to say anything, or are you good? Okay, thank you very much. Hearing no questions for the applicant, we'll open the public to speak on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Ma'am, would you like to speak on this item?
They did not get sworn in.
Ma'am, were you sworn in?
No, I was not.
Okay,
I did
just-
not know that
Don't worry, we'll swear you in right now. Amy's good at it. Go ahead, Amy. And is your husband going to speak also, or you?
No, that's not my husband.
Okay.
He's just another
Hey,
owner.
that nice man that's sitting next to you. Gosh, I hate it when people do that. I just did. Hey, it might be an idea. I don't know.
Okay, if you'd raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, party's
Thank
been
you.
sworn.
Now, if you'll just say your name for the record for us.
My name is Sigrid Franz.
Nice to see you, Sigrid.
I am the secretary for the Sandrak Association, Sandrak 2 Association. My question is, which side of the property is this generator going to be? Is it going to be on the Sandrak side, or is it on the golf
Kara, could you,
view side?
Kara, can you come back up? Let's just, I mean, we don't have a lot of people to speak on this. If you could
And then
just address
also,
that for her.
would it eventually be covered with shrubs and greenery, so we wouldn't have to look at this building?
Are those your questions,
Yes.
Sigrid? Okay. If you'll sit down, I'm going to have Kara address that for you. And make friends with the man next to you.
The structure is on the Sanderac side. It is towards Estero Boulevard. I'm looking at her for the...
That's what...
And it is approximately 24 feet from your property line. The zoning requires us to be 20, so we are further from what the requirement would be. And we are proposing to put some plantings underneath this structure that'll grow to about 10 to 12 feet tall to give some kind of screening. Yes. It's in the parking lot, and you have landscaping next to it. That's why we figured that would kind of not be imposing on your views.
Thank you very much, Kara. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this? Okay, we'll close the public hearing portion of this, or the public comment portion of this. Members of the LPA, I'm going to start with you, Dawn. Are there any questions for staff or the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone, or the staff or the applicant? If not, may I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve the petition and with findings that it has met the criteria and including the conditions recommended by staff.
Thank you, Patrick.
I would second that.
Thank you, Doug. There's a motion by Patrick, a second by Doug. Is there any discussion on the motion?
There is no recommendations.
Jane, there's a motion and a second. Do you have any, the screening?
Screening.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, that we added screening?
Yeah.
We didn't add screening. They have it in their plan.
It's in the condition.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the conditions.
All right, thanks.
Any other discussion? Okay. This is a roll call vote. Patrick, your vote?
Aye.
Doug, your vote?
Aye.
Dawn?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Anita, yes. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas. The next item on the agenda is the TPI FMB Ordinance Amendment DCI 202-300-227. This is to approve or deny the application associated with Margaritaville Properties requesting amendments of Ordinance 1804 to the conditions of approval, number 6, number 12F and G, and number 18A and B. Has everyone who wishes to speak on this been sworn in? Okay. And are there any ex parte communications? Scott has filed a conflict of interest. Jim, any ex parte?
No ex parte.
Jane, ex parte? How about you, Doug?
None.
And Patrick?
No ex parte.
I have ex parte. I spoke with John Richard yesterday. I also have emailed Mr. Torgerson, and those are my ex partes. I'm going to assume that others might have. Jane?
I spoke to John Richard also, and Don hasn't.
I don't think anybody can hear you.
I spoke with John Richard yesterday.
Okay.
Don.
Anybody else? Don?
Ex parte for Don.
No ex parte. Okay, thank you very much. So,
Qualification of witnesses, of those who will be
qualifications
testifying.
of witnesses. So, Mr. Smalley has been previously qualified as an expert for the town, and and Steve from Pavis Law Firm has, Mr. Hartzell has also been qualified previously, but we could re-qualify him. Can we accept Mr. Hartzell as an expert in his field?
Yes.
May I have a motion, Jane?
Motion to accept.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any objection to the motion? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, Jason.
Couple other little housekeeping items.
Okay.
Has the owner applicant received a copy of the background material that's been provided to the LPA? Yes. Thank you. And did you have any questions regarding any of their ex parte disclosures? No. Okay, thank you. Mr. Smalley.
Good morning, members.
Merry Christmas, Jason.
Merry Christmas to you as well, and Merry Christmas to everybody else. My name is Jason Smalley. I'm with the Community Development Department, Planning and Zoning. So today we have a request for an amendment to TPI's already existing CPD. Excuse me. As was shown in the timeline, the original approval was from the 1804 ordinance. And today they will be requesting some minor changes and some substantive changes to those limitations that were originally approved. If you'll entertain me, I'd like to just briefly go through them, just for the advantage of everybody at home. So the first series in the staff report, number 6 and number 18A, are specifically to deal with what were noticed to be some errors. There's no real substantive changes here. Staff has confirmed that those incorrect page listings were retained from earlier ordinances, and today the applicant is wishing to change those. We agree that those pages were just incorrectly noted in previous documentation. Going to conditions of approval for requested change of 12F and 12G, here's where we get into some of the more substantive changes that are being requested. So in 12F, the parcel 2, which includes what is known as Beach Club and the aquatic venue, they are requesting to allow for additional amplified music on that parcel up until 10 p.m. They are also requesting that the time be extended until 11 p.m. as opposed to what previously existed, which was 9 p.m. or 1 hour after sunset. Staff agrees that that would be roughly a 2-hour change that they're requesting in their opening times. Again, the proposal here is for amplified music up until 10 p.m. on parcel 2, with the exception of their open, unenclosed hotel, restaurant, and bar, which would be allowed to be open from 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. That is an existing allowance for time. That was already approved in previous approvals on the CPD. They are also requesting that we clarify that any possible noise violations should be addressed through the town's noise ordinance rather than through CPD limitations. So that by necessity would be handled by the sheriff's office.
Jason, don't go any further
Yes.
because I just wanted to know what your recommendation was on that.
So staff was not involved in actually making the recommendations originally, and staff really holds no recommendations at this point, mainly because we have no performance indicators to compare them against. Obviously, they've been open for a few days now with actual guests on the site, so we don't really have enough time to see whether or not the rules that they were working under were proper or were perhaps too rigid.
Okay, thank you.
Jason, may I ask, just for the record, I mean, any issues with the comp plan? So the request would be consistent with the comp plan?
Staff believes that the recommendations would be consistent with the comp plan should they be approved.
And also, the language that you're referring to, I believe it's on page 21 and 22, is that correct?
I'm sorry, which document?
Of
The staff report. Or the packet?
TPI amendment narrative, is that yours, or is that theirs?
That was the applicant's submittal. Yes. So I do have the sheets, the slides that were given out to us, which reproduce those as well.
To focus the LPA on the actual language change that that staff has reviewed, what page would that be found on?
I'm going to have to go back to the packet. If you are stating that it's on 21 and 22 in the submittal package.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, it is on those pages. I apologize. I did not have their packet in front of me.
I just wanted to have them focused on the specific request.
Absolutely, absolutely. Were there any questions on that documentation or where it's coming from the LPA?
No.
Okay. I would like to then go down to 12G. This is seemingly a small change, but I think staff had a few questions to clarify where they meant on the site. So 12G asked to clarify that the aquatic venue is subject to the 325 non-guest user limitation. Rather than the beach club. I think staff has questions about whether those are terms that are being used interchangeably or were those discrete ring-fenced areas that the applicant could point to. And I think that staff would appreciate at the end here that we have a new map produced to specify what those areas are if they are approved for these conditions changes. So again, staff just wants to clarify the difference, if there is any, between beach club and the aquatic venue. They seem to be used interchangeably in certain portions of the language.
Thank you.
Finally, we'll focus in on condition of approval 18B. So this would be a proposal to extend the hours of alcoholic beverage sales on the approved COP areas until 11 p.m. And this would match the requested condition, the amendment to the condition of approval in 12F. The removal of the language regarding the amplified music is also going to be addressed in 12F. So staff is here for any questions that you may have about our review of this property, and then obviously the applicant has his folks here as well to take questions.
Okay. Dawn, I'm going to start with you. Do you have any questions of the staff?
I don't have any questions, no.
Thank you. How about you, Jane? Questions?
I'm just curious, are there any other businesses on this island that have to submit a monthly report of how many people go through their property?
Not that I'm aware of, no. There are, in that same vein, there are limitations, for instance, on restaurants and their receipts, in which the town can request those documents from them to ensure that they're on the right side of restaurant versus bar or cocktail lounge.
The pink shell does have a limitation on the number of people who can attend that are not staying at the hotel.
Okay. Another question I have is...
Jane, I can barely hear you.
Another question I have is on the location of the music that's going to be outside by the pool area. Do you have any location on that?
So that's where I think staff is looking for a little clarification. We believe that it is the standalone building, but we would like to have the applicant clarify what they mean by aquatic venue and point out explicitly where the restaurant and the unenclosed bar would be allowed to operate until 12 a.m.
Okay.
Doug, any questions for staff?
No, ma'am.
How about you, Patrick?
None.
Jim?
So the staff would like, as a condition of any approval, clarification and the definition of the aquatic venue and the beach club and an associated drawing or something.
Yes, I think it could be accomplished with a one-page drawing, just calling out those different areas and their time allowances.
Scott, I'm just going to ignore you through this one, okay?
Sounds familiar.
All right. Thank you very much, Jason. We may call you back. Mr. Hartson.
Thank you very much.
It's nice to see you. Merry Christmas.
Nice to see all of you. For the record, my name is Steve Hartzell. I'm an attorney with Pavis Law Firm. I'm here on behalf of the applicant TPI. I'd started to say with me today, but with me today is no one. I'm afraid that Mr. Dommerman is out of town, and Tom Torgerson, as you can probably imagine, given the opening of Margaritaville, found himself this morning in a number of meetings dealing with the operations and everything, and he sends his apologies. He really wanted to be here, but he just couldn't tear himself away. So I'll be handling your questions as best I can.
Thank you.
Thank you for qualifying me as an expert. Just briefly, I've been doing this for 38 years here in Southwest Florida. I'm board certified in condominium and plan development law. Started working in the county attorney's office and in Lee County, and like I said, have been doing it for 38 years. We're back with minor changes to the recently amended Margaritaville MPD. The areas that we're dealing with is the beach club area on Gulfside parcels 2 and 5. The PowerPoint that I have matches the one that I passed out to all of you. Briefly, why are we asking for the amendment? Just for the record, the purpose of the Land Development Code is to provide for efficiency and economy in the development process and to promote the appropriate and best use of land according to the present and future needs of Fort Myers Beach. Your Land Development Code, Chapter 34, requires us to consider, among other things, whether there are changed or changing conditions which makes the request appropriate, and whether there is an error or ambiguity which must be corrected. We submit that in this case we have both. TPI submits that the changed circumstances from Hurricane Ian and its impacts on the local community and economy make it appropriate to make minor adjustments to these hours of operation that will ensure the success of the Margaritaville operations, which we also hope will serve to anchor and inspire redevelopment on Fort Myers Beach. Recently, while they were approaching this soft opening, they found a couple of adjustments that are needed. There's an inconsistency in the references to the master concept plan page numbers in conditions 6 and 18A, which Jason has already pointed out in the staff report. Those need to be corrected. And at the same time, there's an ambiguity about that private event use of the outdoor beach club areas after the aquatic venue is closed that also need to be clarified. And the question about what is the aquatic venue is a good question. Once it's completed, the beach club is going to represent a magnificent landscaped area, perfectly suited for evening receptions, for civic, corporate, community, and similar groups to use when they need a venue for various social gatherings. The beach club, with its food and beverage services, is already available until 9 p.m. When the pool and the aquatic venue is closed, those other areas of the beach club could also be used for private events up until 11 p.m., with no amplified music beyond 10 p.m. Those are the changes that we're asking for, essentially adding 2 hours to the use of the beach club area. Now, I'll refer you
Steve, may I stop you for a moment?
Certainly.
Before we go further, could you confirm or deny that beach club and aquatic venue, are they the same thing? Or are they interchangeable terms? Are we talking about the same area?
For clarification, if we look at what's slide 4, which is MCP sheet or page X505-COP.01, this is the 3D portion showing the beach club on the lower right in the beachside area. And you'll note the areas that are shown basically in blue and in brown. The aquatic venue is the blue pool areas. That's the aquatic part of the venue. The beach club is the entire part that has the aquatic venue, the pool areas, the deck areas with the seating, It also has,
So for our purposes, separating out the pool, which is the aquatic venue, so the pool is the aquatic venue.
Yes.
Everything else is the beach club. So for our purposes today, we're really talking about the beach club. Is that correct?
well, we are talking about the entire beach club area.
Okay.
And when the aquatic venue, basically when the pool, which is the activity area that's open to day passes, excuse me, when that gets closed down, probably close to 5 p.m., that entire area would otherwise not really be used. And what Mr. Torgerson recognized is that it really provides for a perfect venue for social gatherings and other private type events, even when the aquatic venue isn't being used. And so they're proposing that at that point in time, they would be able to use the deck areas, the landscaped areas for private events and activities. And that's essentially what he's asking to have
Okay.
made available today.
Thanks for that clarification.
So this is the area that we're talking about. It's the lower right-hand portion of the beach club area. I don't think there's a pointer here.
That's okay. We know what it is.
Okay. So let's look at the conditions. Condition number 7 of the CPD limits the non-resort guest use of the aquatic venue on parcel 2 to a maximum 325 non-resort residents. So that's a per-day limitation. Condition number 7 is not going to change. There will still be a limitation on those 325 non-resort. However, during the hours when that pool and water area, the aquatic venue, gets closed, the other beautiful areas of the beach club will otherwise be vacant, and we're proposing that those would be open and available as the beach club outdoor areas for private events within the already permitted COP areas on parcel 2, and that we would also moderately increase the hours of operation from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. So let's look at condition number 12, which is on slide 6. To add a couple of hours to that use, what we are proposing is that, as condition 12F presently says, the beach club and its ancillary uses may operate only from 7 a.m. to, and if you go to the bottom part of it, 1 hour after sunset, but never later than 9 p.m. That's the beach club hours of operation, unless they get special event permission. We're proposing that instead of closing it at 9 p.m., it be open until 11 p.m., as it says in 12F up there in the bold. The aquatic venue is limited by condition 7 to 325 non-resort guests. When the aquatic venue is closed, the other outdoor patios and related areas of the Parcel 2 Beach Club, limited to the locations that are shown on the master concept plan as COP areas, may be used for private events. No amplified music is permitted past 10 p.m. Since this venue is open air, with regard to the music or noise, the town's noise ordinance would be enforced. And then the second part, in 12G, clarifies that to implement the applicant's commitments to limit access to the aquatic venue to 325 people per day who are not staying at the hotel, the resort has to submit those monthly reports to the town. So the only thing we're doing in 12G is to clarify that what's being closed is the aquatic venue portion of the beach club.
Steve, quick question.
Yes.
With that clarification of aquatic venue versus beach club, does that essentially say that 325 is the limit to the aquatic venue? That closes down, there's a party that night, maybe a few hundred people show up, it doesn't count towards the 325?
Yes.
Okay.
They're just using the decks and the outdoor areas that are otherwise still available.
Does a private event include the aquatic venue?
No, the aquatic venue would need to be closed.
So it doesn't matter if you're a a non-resident or non-hotel guest or not, the aquatic venue is closed during a private event after hours.
Yes.
Steve, I'd like to just ask a further clarification on this. So the way this reads, the aquatic venue is limited by condition 7 to 325 non-resort guests. That means there could be in excess of over 500 people there at any given time, because that 325 does not include hotel guests. So, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. When I'm just going to say pool, is closed, the other outdoor patios and related areas on Parcel 2 Beach Club, limited to locations on the MCP, which is the Master Concept Plan, and COP, which is Consumption on Premise Area, may be used for private events. So, and no amplified music is permitted past 10 p.m. Since this venue is open air with regard to music or noise, the town's noise ordinance, blah, blah, will be enforced. So is this request is specifically for private events?
Yes.
Specifically. And how will the town or the public be aware of a private event? So in a normal course of everyday business, tomorrow, nothing's happening, there's no Christmas parties, there's no whatever. It will close at what time? 9 p.m.?
The beach club is otherwise open or available until 9 p.m.
Okay. So this whole condition is only for special events?
Yes, it's when the aquatic venue...
Did you all understand that? Because I did not understand that to begin with. Are you sure?
That's what I believe, yes.
Okay.
Because the beach club area...
I guess the important thing there will just be...
I'm sorry, going back to what you see on the beach side.
Yes.
The larger building on the left-hand side
Yep.
has hotel units on top and the main restaurant on the bottom. The restaurant is unenclosed restaurant, but it has garage doors that lower to enclose. That's now open and available until 12 p.m., as I understand that. And
then the bar, La Ti Da, is over there, right?
Right, is in the middle between what you see as the aquatic venue, closer to the beach, is the open air bar.
And that's open until?
9.
I believe that's also open until 12 p.m. Both of them are presently available until that period of time. So that area is still presently being used, but as far as the aquatic venue and the beach club area, when the aquatic venue gets closed down, they wanted to be able to use the rest of the beach club area for private events, however those might be determined.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
All right. These are the amendments to condition 12F and 12G. Condition 18 also needs to be amended to reflect in 18B that the alcohol beverages in the beach club area are limited to 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. as opposed to the present limitation of 9 p.m. And you'll note that we took out the reference to the amplified music because that's addressed in condition 12F now. And then finally, we get back to essentially the editorial changes, corrections to the master concept plan change or pages Conditions 6 and 18A have a couple of changes that need to correct those page numbers. Condition number 9 is where the correct page numbers are shown. And I show here in this table, on the left-hand side under parcel 1, it's circled and says correct. Those page numbers are the correct page numbers. Under parcel 2 on the Gulf side, apparently there was some change to the page numbers during the original approval process, and column 2 under parcel 2 didn't get changed, and so those ought to be changed in condition number 6. And we find in condition 18A the same thing happened. They were correctly referenced in the opening paragraph, and then in subparagraph A, they were not. So in conclusion, we would submit that the minor changes correct the existing errors or ambiguities and will remain consistent with the town's land development code and comprehensive plan, as well as being consistent with the overall theme of Margaritaville. And we would request that you approve the changes.
Thank you, Steve.
Happy to answer any questions.
Yes. Are there, could I suggest something? Does anybody else have the confusion I have about special events? Would you all mind if we took a 10-minute break to allow Mr. Hartzell to contact his client to clarify this point? I think this really needs clarification because it's not at all how I understood it to begin with.
Anita, I've got
Yes.
one clarification to look into also. So condition 12F does say special events. Okay?
Yep.
Private event. Okay? However, it says that these private events can occur after the aquatic club has closed. There might be a condition somewhere else in the PD, but I don't have it here. This does not say at what time the aquatic club has to close.
That's right.
So should the aquatic club be open till 11, then every day you can have private events, essentially.
No, and that would be the point. When the aquatic venue is closed, the rest of the beach area could be used for private events.
Is there a limitation? That's what I'm asking for. Is there a limitation in the PD elsewhere that sets times for the aquatic club? Because what you've given us doesn't show it, but it might be in there.
I do not believe that there is any limitation on the timing of the.
Yes, there is. But I can't remember. But I'm sure there is because that was part in the course. That's why we need this clarified. In the course of the CPD, it wasn't just about amplified music. It was about the ambient noise of potentially 500 people. Okay, so Mr. Torgerson is available for a call, Mr. Hartzell. So I'm going to put the meeting in a 10-minute break, and we're going to clarify these issues. So,
Good deal.
Steve, if you, Jason, will you put us on mute? No, not Jason, Jacob. Thank you. Thank you all for that, that brief pause. Scott Safford will be rejoining us here in a moment. Okay, Mr. Hartzell, can you answer our questions now?
I believe that I can. Steve
Hallelujah.
Hartzell, for the record again, thank you for that pause.
It was important. Yeah.
With regard to the aquatic venue,
The pool.
the pool part of the beach club area, that is presently limited to 9 p.m. The amendment will be for those days when there are private events that have been scheduled for the beach club area and the aquatic venue is closed down for those private events. So when the aquatic venue, the pool area, is closed early, before 9 p.m., the rest of the beach club area, the deck, the landscaped areas, would be open and available as a venue for private events.
Did Mr. Torgerson indicate to you how we, as a town, would be aware, or the public would be knowledgeable of these private events? I mean, at a resort like Margaritaville, I would think every day is a private event. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm really asking that question. So if it's limited to private events, how are we going to define those?
In terms of private events would be those where you need an invitation to come. In other words, if you, for instance, if there is a, here at Diamond Head, if somebody's going to use the conference rooms, they have to book those, and that's a private event.
I understand, but somebody books this as a special event, it doesn't implicate or impact anyone. But if someone books the beach club as a private event, it will absolutely impact neighborhoods. And I think those were the questions that have been raised as to this sound, extended hours, and whatever else. So I'm just asking, how would the special event or the private event be moderated, or maybe there's not an answer to that. Do you all understand what I'm asking? Does anybody else share that concern?
How's it verified?
How is it? Yeah.
Like for a wedding, you would have, it would only be invitation only, and
I get that, how it would work, but how does the rest of the world know that this is a private event, and so they have this allowance for these private events? Is there a limit to the number of private events that would occur there, or could potentially there be a private event or multiple private events every day of the year? In which case, the end result would be we've just expanded the hours period.
I suppose theoretically that could be the case. I think the idea is that with the closure of the aquatic venue, which is really the attraction for the 325 non-resort guests, when that gets closed and it's not being used, probably from roughly 5 p.m. to 11 p.m., the area is otherwise largely unoccupied. And the goal would then be to allow private events to, in that case, Margaritaville would allow for a wedding party, for instance, to go use the beach club area, and would close it off operationally with ropes or barriers or whatever, and say this is open to the wedding party.
Yeah, I've been to plenty of those events, and they're not quiet. And so I'm just thinking in terms of, this was a big deal in the course of the CPD. That use, the number of potential people that could be there, the noise, and how it would impact the adjacent neighborhoods. Now, granted, it is largely commercial in that area, but there are regular people who live on regular streets there too, that we took great consideration in minimizing, at least we hoped, the impacts of that. So that's my question, but I'm gonna stop talking and see if anybody else has any questions. Patrick, you have anything for Mr. Hartzell?
No questions, just discussion later.
Okay. Doug, do you have any questions?
I have a question, and I'm not sure if it's a question or a discussion item, but I imagine one of the factors in limiting hours had something to do with sea turtles. And is that concern been addressed previously? I just,
Say that again?
sea turtles.
Sea turtles.
We've got lighting restrictions and so forth. And
I
I
guess that
think,
would-
I think after sunset or after 9 p.m. is when you expect the possibility, anyway, of sea turtles.
It's my understanding that the sea turtle limitations are related to light that's generated by the site. And I'm not aware of any, I'm not aware of anything that would allow light from the resort area to exceed the standards that are otherwise imposed by the beach with regard to sea turtles.
Yeah, I would assume so. I just wondered if the 9 p.m. had something to do with, in addition to what Anita said,
I don't remember.
concerns for sea turtles.
I did not see anything in the existing conditions that indicated that sea turtles and ours related. It
Just
seemed
a
more like
question.
light that was related.
Dawn, do you have any questions of Mr. Hartzell? Dawn Suddeth, are you there?
He's on delay.
Yes, I am. Sorry, you were breaking up a bit.
Oh, no problem. Do you have any questions of Mr. Hartzell?
He said no.
No, no questions, okay.
Okay.
Jane, any questions?
On the entertainment that would be the amplified music, where would that be located? Is it seaward of the building, or is it around the pool, or where is it?
Wish I had asked that question a moment ago. I understand that there are speakers that are part of the beach club area, and that you've got kind of the ambient amplification of music that comes from
Like,
speakers
is it-
throughout the beach club, or throughout
You
the
don't see 'em, but
deck
they're there.
area,
Uh-huh.
so that you can hear the music as you're walking around, which, to the extent that it's helpful, I understand and I appreciate that Mr. Richard has a presentation as well and is concerned about that. As Mr. Torgerson has explained it to me, the amplified music that would occur between 9 and 10 p.m. would largely be background mood music as opposed to loud live music.
Unfortunately, that's very subjective. Your mood and my mood are very different.
I
It's-
understand.
yeah.
We were trying to
Come up
find
with
a way
something.
to,
I know,
yes,
I know.
I want to talk about ambient background music as opposed to,
Yeah, a band.
yes, entertainment music, a
Right,
band,
right.
live music like that. Again, more for background than,
Yeah,
and if that's a concern, we can address that as well.
okay.
Madam
Jim?
Chair?
Yes.
We may have a little bit more information, because it seems that questions are coming up regarding whether it's a private event or perhaps an event that would require a special event permit. And so Sarah has reference to the existing ordinance. Could you give you perhaps a little bit more information?
Thank you.
So the definition of a special event is an activity within the boundaries of the town of Fort Myers Beach which would inhibit the usual flow of pedestrian or vehicular travel, or which occupies any public area or building so as to preempt use of said area by the general public, or which deviates from the established use of said area of building, but such term does not include the following. And it talks about residential dwellings and and a permitted activity, and then it says private gatherings that will make no use of public property other than for lawful parking. So the vast majority of the events taking place on Margaritaville's property are going to be considered private gatherings. So they would not fall under a special event use unless someone needed to use the beach, the town's beach property, such as if they wanted a wedding on the sand.
Mhm. That doesn't help, but that's clarifying. Jim, do you have questions for Mr. Hartzell?
So a private event could be a 500-person wedding reception?
In which case, forget about the sound. You're
Yeah.
talking about the people.
Well, and if it's a limitation to ambient sound, or could they have their band out there? There's plenty of room for a band to set up in that beach area.
I don't believe that that's anticipated in the beach club area. There are a number of areas within the Margaritaville where live music is offered. I did not see the beach club area as being one of those.
But in the current proposal, there's no limitation that would.
There wasn't, no.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Mr. Hartzell?
No, ma'am, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Okay. Let me see if there's any public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody who would like to make comment on this case? John.
Yep.
Amy, will you swear our new customer in, please?
Anybody else?
And she does have written communication on this topic as a public comment.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Party's been sworn.
Good morning, everybody. John McLean, Egret Street. I appreciate the lines of questioning that are going on. The concern that I have is it seems that the cutout of the aquatic area from the beach club seems to remove restrictions from the beach club that are in place for the aquatic venue. It appears to me, though I couldn't say anything about the intent, that this will allow extended use of the entire beach club for whatever might be defined as a private event, which it seems like anything that occurs on Margaritaville will be a private event. I'm not opposed to using that property, but I believe that the original intent is being stretched by this request. I guess those are my comments, is that I believe that the accepted use, or as I read it is written, is much broader than a small private event that is by invitation only. It just seems that this is very, very broad, and that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Merry Christmas. Anybody else like to speak? Jason, do you have any follow-up that you'd like to share with us? No. Since we have efficiently muddied the waters of the beach club?
So I think one thing staff did have, and I don't think it was broached at all in this topic here, but parcel 5 is the beach area. I believe that is the COP area. The sand, exactly. So none of this necessarily relates to 5, but I was just, I think staff would appreciate clarification that, again, since the COP area seems to extend across almost the entirety of parcel 2, do we know whether parcel 5, the beach area or sand area, would also take on some of those guests in these off hours?
I don't think that's clear. I mean, it's not stipulated.
Jason, if you look at F, it does talk to parcel 2.
Right.
Versus the beach area being parcel 5. However, I was wondering, does the COP extend to both parcels? I would imagine
I
so.
believe it does. So while sales may be limited to parcel 2, that theoretically would allow these guests during the evening to then utilize parcel 5 unless that's been physically limited to them. So I think staff would just appreciate a clarification on that in particular.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Mr. Hartzell, do you have any final thoughts?
Probably a couple of final thoughts. With regard to parcel 5 and, let me see if I can, this is the part of the plan that shows the area where COP is allowed. And parcel 5 is sort of the pointed part that points toward the beach. It's the small adjacent area to the larger parcel 2 that has the chairs. I was just over there this morning to orient myself, and it appears to me that parcel 2 is separated by a sort of fence from the parcel 5, which is also separated from the rest of the open beach by a fence. So it does appear to me that there's some distinction physically on the ground there, where the sand area of parcel 5 is physically separated from the other parts of the beach club area. But I believe that the beach club area includes both parcel 2 and parcel 5. Now, it also appears to me that the COP approval includes parcel 2 and parcel 5. That's what the plans show to me. Now, again, I'm not certain why there's that physical separation with the kind of fence between parcel 2 and parcel 5.
Well, it does say expansion of COP onto the sandy beach seaward of the seawall is prohibited.
Yes, it does. I just wasn't sure whether the seawall was on parcel 2.
Yeah, or 5.
Or whether the seawall was on the south part of parcel 5. But yes, that's where I believe that wherever the seawall is, that's the end of where the COP area can be. I don't happen to know where it is right now, but I think it's already addressed, I guess was my point.
Okay.
I would be happy, to the extent that there are questions specifically with regard to the language and how that applies, I would be happy to talk about that. Again, we're basically asking for the extension of 2 hours when the aquatic part of the beach club area is closed down. And the beach club area will still be open to folks who are using the restaurant, the ancillary restaurant and bar area as well.
That's different than private events.
And that is true. When there aren't private events, that whole area can be used by those who are resort guests. Part of my point being, I guess, that folks are still using that area during the rest of the, all the way up until 9 o'clock. We're simply asking that it be open for those special events until 11 o'clock if the aquatic venue gets closed down. In other words, reduce the activity from the aquatic venue.
The only difference is splashing.
I mean, I do understand what you're saying, but that is the draw.
Intent. Yeah.
Exactly. So that if they are removing the activities of the aquatic events, which draws people from outside, but allowing private events to use the deck areas, we're looking at that as effectively a wash.
Mr. Hartzell, I know that in my email exchange with the property owner, or the principals. I know that this was intended to be a simple kind of thing, but it's become very complicated, at least to me, and you know, I feel intimately involved with this project, and I dislike saying negative things about it because I think it is such a positive.
Sure.
But by the same token, I know what the concerns are of folks who are worried about being impacted by it. If I could just stop for 1 second. Amy, did you want to state for the record the email and the public comment that you received, just so we have it on the record? I'm sorry, I meant to come to you before
Sure,
that.
not a problem. You all received a copy of a letter from John Richard and Dory Smith this
Yes, we did.
morning. That will be entered into the record. And then I also received an email yesterday afternoon. It says, John Richard brought to our attention that Margaritaville wants to extend their playing of music until 11 p.m. We on Primo Drive across the canal from the resort would like to object to this. We think 10 p.m. is long enough to blast out over our residential neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration of this objection. 3 registered voters and permanent residents since the late 50s, Thomas, Christine, and Darby Patton.
Thank you very much.
That's all I have.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, any final questions for Mr. Hartzell, from anyone?
I guess my question is when the aquatics area is closed, does the music that is in the surrounding area go down, or does it just continue to play?
The music would continue to play.
Okay.
The aquatic venue portion, I'm sorry, I interrupted, but the aquatic venue that we are talking about is the pool area. The deck areas will still be open.
Right.
People could still walk around there. They could still sit out on the decks, even when the pool is actually closed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it's got an acoustic band somewhere for this private event, where would that be located? To me, that is the question, in where and how. Is it protected? Is it facing the streets? Is it facing the Gulf of Mexico? Is it facing the hotel? Because those 30 people in that one building are also going to want to go to sleep at some point. And, I can't imagine that they're going to want to listen to acoustic beyond a certain hour.
Well, they're not talking about acoustic, Jane, they're talking about amplified.
Okay. Same difference.
I've got a question, Steve. I don't know where this discussion is going to go. However, would you and your client be willing to maybe table the issue to come back with a plan and mitigation measures to address some of these concerns that might come up? Again, I think we want all our businesses to do really well and, be very successful. I think there might be some concerns, and I think the idea, just like when we talked to the whale, there was discussion about how things could be mitigated or controlled, and we just haven't been presented with that. So I think maybe instead of having a long, prolonged discussion today, you guys put a plan together and come back to us with restrictions, conditions, or how this could be dealt with.
And I would like to add to Pat, there was questions that came up about, the anticipated number of private events and size of the number of people that would be at these events and location of the speakers and music. I mean, just sort of specifics that I think people were just kind of looking for a little more specificity on that type of thing. But I would second Pat that we want Margaritaville to be successful. But addressing my question about turtles and stuff, I assume that's been addressed already. But
I guess the question that I might ask is, it seems to me that the larger part of the concern is the extension of amplified music from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Would it be more acceptable to simply say the music, the amplified music remains limited to the 9 PM, that would be your recommendation.
Well, it's not just that, it's also the COP 211. So it's just
Yes,
the
it's-
whole use of the, I'm going to call it the beach club. The whole use of the beach club beyond 9 PM, I think is what both Pat and Doug, well, what we're all kind of saying is, we need details for this, because it isn't, I'll tell you, what I thought I was going to be talking about here this morning is not what we're ending up talking about. It's just different. And I think that there is, Jason mentioned, we don't have any performance standards yet for Margaritaville. And so we've got nothing to judge it by. It is, in my opinion, it's in the best interest of your client to do as Patrick is suggesting and table this and come back to us with a better plan. Or take your shot here with whatever our vote is and move it to the council. That's your decision.
And perhaps as part of our discussion, we can highlight a few of
The
our
issues.
concerns, and then they can bring it back and address those.
Yep.
I will say that I have been impressed with what I have seen in the guidance of the people that have been in the La-di-da.
For sure.
As far as, I have been there twice, once with the garage doors open and once with the garage doors down. I could talk to the person sitting next to me, which I really appreciated, because sometimes you go and you have to wait to talk until they take a break. But both of them, and I thought with the garage door down, it would be just vibrating off the wall, and it wasn't. The other thing I can say is that the couple sitting next to us ordered a drink and they were going to leave, and he said, no, you can't leave with that glass in your hand. So I was very impressed that they were
the
monitoring
training of
that,
the employees,
and the
yeah.
employees were really following through with that. And so I do want to praise them on that behavior. And I think that, on a nice night, it would be nice to go out onto the deck and have a cocktail as opposed to be stuck in the box. But, there has to be some regulations for us to be able to protect the neighborhood.
So are there any further questions for Mr. Hartzell? If not, Mr. Hartzell, I'm going to ask you to sit down and we will discuss.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Patrick? I think it's a good idea to identify these issues.
So I think the issues that come to mind for me is, if we look at the way this resort was designed, the big upper deck is completely shielded. It was always intended as an entertainment area, and that's very clear. This area is a beautiful area. I think it'd be a shame that it doesn't get used. So I think, at least personally, I would like to see that area used. I think it'd be wonderful cocktail party type of area. And I think that the courtesy to the neighbors is typically when we allow those uses, we just account for how you mitigate for it. Right now, I've seen a lot of the recent plantings that have gone in. Plantings look great, but, typically if it's going to be a busy area in the evenings, you create some mitigation measures for sound. And that's, I don't want to tell them how to design it, how to do it. My thing is more of, just tell us that you've considered these issues and tell us how you're going to mitigate for them and how you're willing to limit things or address things. I want them to be wildly successful, and I could tell you that if they're going to be wildly successful, people are going to want to use that pool deck area on a regular basis. There's going to be weddings, there's going to be parties, there's going to be corporate events, and people are going to want to be there. It's beautiful. You're going to have a sight of the beach and the Gulf. So I think we just have to assume that there will be activity there on a regular basis. That's just an assumption we have to make. Then given that there's going to be activity, how do you mitigate for it? That's all.
Doug, any comments?
Yeah, I have a couple comments. One is, would there be any usefulness to separate approval of minor corrections and so forth, and get that housekeeping done that's not controversial, and just get that out of the way so we can focus on the important items.
Yes, I was going to ask Nancy, it's because
Is
it's
that
all come as
possible?
one variance, one application, but could we separate that out to the page listings, the script portion, which is number 16 and number 18A? Could we separate those two out and approve those if we intend to potentially table the rest of this application to a future date?
I think the applicant would have to agree to amend the application.
Okay, so better to do it all at once.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think so.
Thank
Okay.
you, Nancy.
And then, like, in terms of mitigation, maybe, again, not really wanting to tell people what to do, but let's say, well, the private events would be limited to 150 people or something like that, or some number. So right now, it seems like it could be any number of people, which it probably wouldn't be, but it would, I think, maybe help make folks feel better if there was, it's a certain number of people, noise is going to be mitigated. I agree, I like the idea of having a cocktail out there myself, thinking about it, but maybe details like that, I think, would help us approve or disapprove it or recommend it, I think.
Okay. Dawn, do you have any comments or suggestions for further clarification on this?
No additional comments. I agree with everything that's been said, and agree with some of the other comments as well with respect to use and that stuff. Yeah, I don't think I have any suggestions. It may have been mentioned already and I missed it, but one idea would be to limit pool use. In other words, no one could be in the pool, which might help some, but no other items.
Thank you. Jane?
My thoughts are that I think the extension to 11 o'clock for amplified music is too loud or too long for an open-aired venue. Like the upstairs is enclosed with glass and it has different areas and it can face the hotel and it's protected. But an open-air venue just is open to the public unless they can come up with some kind of mitigation before they go to council, then I would be required, I would think that 10 o'clock would be
Jane, just to clarify, the beach club would be open till 11, possibly, but the music would stop.
Yeah.
The amplified sound would stop at 10.
Oh, okay. Well,
According
then
to what they're proposing.
I'm okay with that, with the mitigation of the location and the sound. The bar could stay open till 11 o'clock because I think people would go back and forth. If they wanted to have more music afterwards, they can go to La-Di-Da and still continue after that, but at least it would calm down by 10 o'clock for the people who want to go to sleep.
Jim, any comments?
Yeah, a couple. I'd like to see a clarification of the term private event with or without conditions of what would constitute a private event, and use of amplified music as it relates to parcel 2. I think those clarifications would bring everything into focus for me anyway.
Agreed. Okay. So, my inclination is to suggest that we table this.
To a date certain.
Or we approve the, I'm gonna call them script errors, as number 6 and number 18A. And then we could either deny or approve with all these conditions, 12F and G and 18A and B. What's your pleasure?
Can I clarify a little bit? When you say to table, that would be to basically continue it to a date
Correct,
certain?
to continue it, yes.
Continue it to a date certain.
Continue it to a date certain. That's what I meant.
With some explanation as to what
Yes.
we hope to see at the continuation meeting. And in the alternative, I think I heard you say that you would be willing to approve it in part and deny it in part? Or approve it in part with conditions, well, it would be approval with conditions related to some of the.
With all the stipulations that have been
Stipulation.
brought forward.
Right.
So I don't know how the LPA feels about that, but
What would the applicant like to see?
I'll be honest, I would prefer an approval with the conditions that you are addressing, which will help to focus our presentation to the city council. I say approval, you're obviously making a recommendation to city council to approve the changes, to keep the whole package together, but to recognize the questions, which are legitimate, good questions. And I apologize for not having all the answers to
That's
them.
okay.
But they're good questions. How to effectively define a private event? Do we limit that to a certain number of people? I suspect that given outside of this hearing, given the time to think about it, that we could come up with some limitations on the number of people, because practically there's a limitation on the number of people who would be in the private event. And I'm certain that Mr. Torgerson would be willing to look at that and more clearly specify what those conditions would be. And again, we're talking about the question of amplified music between 9 and 10, which is the difference that we're asking for here. Although, yes, the beach club area would be open until 11. How many more people does that mean? So I think we could come up with answers to those questions for the town council. So I would request your recommendation of approval for the things that you can live with and a response for us.
thank you, Mr. Hartzell.
Thank you.
So if I can perhaps assist with drafting of a motion to be made by
Hold
perhaps.
on, I want to see if everybody wants to do that.
Okay. Oh, do you
But
want to ask
thank you,
first?
Nancy. I'm going to ask the rest of
Okay.
these people up here. How do you feel about that?
I'm okay with us crafting conditions. I know for the applicant, we're recommending body, council makes final decision.
Right.
So we can give guidance, and that'll give them time also to get prepared and address some of our concerns by the time they go to council. So from a time perspective, I'm happy with us
Okay.
doing something today.
You feel the same way, Doug?
I would rather table it for more precise discussions and addressing our questions.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure, I know all the conditions I would want to add. I know we discussed a number of things, but we haven't enumerated them. And it would help me to see like a summary of 1, 2, 3 bullets. Here's what we're really asking for. We're changing this legal language, which is hard to interpret
I think
sometimes.
I could help you with that. I've got it, well, let's just see, okay.
But if you got them down.
Yeah. We'll see how well I did that. Don, how do you feel about this?
I'm a little mixed. I kind of feel like you and Doug with respect to cable, but then I go back to, we know council watches the LPAs, learn from the discussion, and so part of me sides a little with Pat with respect to putting the conditions on it. But again, concerned as Doug is, can we get all the conditions documented here that we think we need?
Okay.
I'm not sure we're all prepared for that.
Okay. Jane, how do you feel? Move forward or
I feel
continue?
that we all have thoughts in our mind that we can collectively come up with bullets that
Okay.
we would want addressed before the council.
Jim?
I'm okay with approval subject to our comprehensive list of conditions.
Okay. So if I could suggest 6 and 8A, or 18A, not really an issue with that, right? The 12F and G, which is the noise and everything else, we have asked how we need a specific plan, how special events will be mitigated for ambient and/or amplified sound at the beach venue.
Private events?
That's what they would.
Private events, because that's what they've asked for, right? There was an issue raised as to compliance with the sea turtle ordinance for extended hours and lighting. Another issue was raised about a clear, detailed map, updated map, this was from staff, identifying aquatic venue / pool and beach club. There was an issue raised about a capacity limit for these private events. What would that be? Issue was raised as to whether or not 11 p.m. is simply too late, whether or not it should stay, whether or not we should move it from 9 to 10, but not necessarily extend to 11.
Well, that's just for the.
Right.
For the music.
And to specifically define what a private event is and define and identify where and how amplified music would occur in the beach club aquatic venue. That's everything I have listed. Did I miss something?
Anita, also
Yep.
the letter from John Richard.
Yes.
When I read it, to summarize what he's got on there is he supports the request, generally speaking. However, the extra hour, essentially, of amplified music is what he'd like to stay the same as is today.
Yeah.
So I think we, on the public's behalf, that could be one of the things that's addressed. Again, not making a decision here, just
But
asking. you-
our recommendation
Yeah.
could be that it stays at 10 and not to 11.
No.
Stays at 9.
Stays at 9
Stays at
rather than
9.
10. 11 is 4 hours of operation.
Okay.
And this is more of a, before we get into the discussion, is I'm trying to recall our 2 discussions with the whale and how things evolved over there and what we asked them to do. And I just can't fully recall. I think we have to also consider what was asked there, and it seems like it was successful, and they're being a good neighbor. So I think, at least for me, I'd like to go back and, if I could, just how did we leave things with the whale? And again, I think it serves as a good example. Again, we evaluate each case separately, but that does provide us a little context.
Agreed.
Mhm.
Sarah, do you know that? Could you bring that?
The only thing is that the whale compared to Margaritaville is it's just so they don't have they have a fraction of the capacity. So the implications for Margaritaville are much greater. But I understand you'd like a consistent train of thought.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Nancy. Hearing all of that.
So hearing all that, it would be a motion to approve on the, I believe it was the 7 conditions that were identified with, and direction to staff to do further review concerning the whale and how that compares to this project.
And approve
But
the whale is not part of the conditions.
no, just to have some consistency. Okay, so it seems like a majority would like to move this forward, and so,
You need a motion?
yeah, I'll take a shot at it, or you take a shot at it. What do you want to do? Well, you can't make a motion, you're the attorney. Patrick, you want to take a stab at it? You want me to
I'll
take
let
a
you
stab
take
at
a
it?
stab at it.
Okay, so,
I think I helped with some suggested language, but I didn't have all the 7th. I didn't elaborate. the 7, you do have 7, Anita, correct?
We have 1, 2, 3, 5.
Oh, I must have.
No, she meant your
6.
condition.
Oh, why, I may have more just on the fly here. No. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 7.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
So someone would need to make a motion to approve.
Yes.
Conditioned on the 7
Okay,
items.
so I am going to make, I'm going to be as specific as I can. Gosh, speaking of specific, boy, Joanne Champ was masterful in her approach on this one back in the day, but, okay, so there will be a motion to approve the TPI-FMB ordinance amendment with the following conditions. Number 6 and 18A are approved as distributed. They are corrections, nothing more in page listings and script. Number 12, F, and G, which pertain to the extended hours and amplified music. The conditions are as follows. A mapped plan of how mitigation will occur for special or private events at the venue. Define private events. Whether or not define compliance with the Sea Turtle ordinance in respect to extended hours and lighting. A clear map identifying the aquatic venue / pool and the beach venue area. Create a private event capacity limit. And limit the hours. Patrick, what was that again? Where's John Richardson?
I wouldn't, just to address the public's comment with extending the amplified music to 10. Again, I don't really have an opinion at this time, but.
Okay, so the condition would be that amplified music would be limited to 10 p.m., but operation may extend to 11 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's 7. Am I right?
Did you have the map?
Yes, I did say the map.
Okay.
Then, for 18, A and B, which is an extension of the COP, those would be to approve given the preceding conditions to coincide.
I'll second that.
Did that make sense to everybody? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Sounded good.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. In discussion, I'm just going to say that I feel pretty certain that Mr. Torgerson and/or Mr. Dammerman would be present at the town council because it's their property, it's their project, and it's their word that will decipher this. I mean, I'm comfortable with that, but the public needs to be comfortable with that. So is there any discussion on the motion? Anything anybody would like to add? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. My vote is yes. Jane?
Yes.
Patrick?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
How about you, Don?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And Mr. Safford is recused from this vote. So the motion carries unanimously with one outstep. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is variance 202-30162, which is for 21391 Widgeon Terrace. This is resolution number 24185, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach approving with conditions or denying the variance. There are two variances from table LDC 34-3 to decrease the required side yard setback from 2.1 feet from the required 10 feet, and to decrease the required water body setback by 14.9 feet from the required 25 feet in the RC zoning district for the property located at 21391 Widgeon Terrace, providing for clarifications as necessary, providing for conflicts of law, Scrivener's errors, severability, and providing for an effective date. Are there any ex parte communications on this? Patrick?
No communication.
How about you, Doug?
None.
And Jane?
None.
Dawn?
None.
I have none. Jim?
None.
And Scott?
None.
Okay. Is everybody sworn in who's going to be speaking on this? Yes? Okay. Sarah?
Good morning. Sarah Probst with Community Development. Todd Plaisted, owner of 21391 Widgeon Terrace, is requesting a variance from Table 34-3 and 34-638D3C3 of the LDC for the construction of a pool. The applicant is requesting a variance of 2.18 feet from the 10-foot side setback required for the 108-foot wide property for a side setback of 7.8 feet. The applicant did indicate that they began the design process prior to the change for the side setback requirement, however, and when it was a 7.5-foot side setback, this would have met the requirements. The property abuts a unseawalled water body, which requires a 25-foot rear setback from the mean high water line for any structure. The proposed pool location would require a variance of 10.6 feet for a setback distance from the mean high water of 14.4 feet. This lot is 58 feet deep. The property is zoned RC and is toward the end of the street of the relatively unique Widgeon Terrace neighborhood.
Relatively unique. It is unique.
Many homes and pools in the neighborhood appear to be non-conforming in regard to setbacks. The house on this parcel does not meet the required rear setback from the mean high water line. After a re-review of the staff report and documents in advance of this meeting, I would like to change the staff position to a recommendation of approval for the water body setback variance request. The depth of the lot and the right-of-way easement along the front of portion of this property significantly impact the ability to construct a pool on this property without a reduction in the required water body setback. Of note, this pool will be elevated. However, the setback requirements applied to this pool at grade or elevated are the same, 10 feet side, 25 feet from the water body. I'm available for any questions you may have, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Are there questions for Sarah right now?
Sarah, in the in the packet, there refers to several pictures, but there's no pictures attached to where the pool is actually going to be, and it's not on the survey.
I actually did not. It's not.
There is a survey after Jane that shows where it's going to be.
Yeah.
The pictures, it refers to pictures of the neighboring pools that aren't there.
Okay.
So there was a.
Jane, can you?
Okay.
Can you put him to the microphone? Don was just saying that there are photos in. He was just clarifying that.
That's on page
25.
25. That's not right.
Or
Of that little, okay, of that.
Yeah, not of our back.
The original survey we received did not show the location of the pool. We requested that they indicate where the pool would be
Trying to
proposed.
find the page number, sorry.
Yeah, it's on page 162 of the PDF, and it shows the pool.
Okay. I do
Shows
see it now. I
pool
just
by
wanted to
others.
confirm that area. Okay.
Mhm.
So prior to the change of side setbacks, this would only require a water body setback.
That's what they did indicate. In thinking back at that time, so we changed from, I think at that time we were at the 15%. I was speaking with the applicant before this hearing on our break, and that's when they indicated such. At the time that they would have done this, I believe it would have been the required 15% setback unless it was prior to that. So it was a 7.5-foot side setback, then it got switched to a 15% of the lot width, and then it got changed to 10 for 100-foot wide lots. So it's changed several times over the last couple of years.
And the majority of the pools that are on that strip of Widgeon Terrace are actually seaward of the houses.
Yes.
And have a much less setback, and this does at least meet the boundaries of the waterfront level of the house. It doesn't exceed closer to the water.
There's a covered area. It looks like it's fairly even with the covered area. So yes, it's fairly close to where the house is.
Yep. When, Don, do you want to discuss when you lived there, you were researching pools, and at that time, the setbacks were, the only setback you were going to have to work on was?
Yeah, I bought the property through Jane, and we did look at this for a pool plan, and it was 7.5 back then. To Sarah's point, it has changed a couple of times. I just note that I was on the board for that Land Condominium Association. Every house on the street, I think, actually encroaches on the 25-foot setback, and then every pool also, because that street has that odd HOA conservation area or easement or whatever along the back. So I think we just a couple months ago just approved another pool in the street that was water body side of the house that we encroached. So unfortunately, that street is just a unique street where this street runs one way. There's water on both sides, and then they're very, very shallow lots with sort of some unique structures.
That's true.
Yeah, and the right-of-way is within the front portion of those lots.
Right.
The lot actually contains roadway.
Right, and there is access off
And
of
just
that
one other
side.
point,
Go ahead,
One
Don.
other point, I did research all the places for a pool in this lot, and this is, I can tell you from my research several years back, this is the only place that it would fit on the lot, based on all the other items that we've discussed.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Sarah?
Sarah, I think also, my question though, just to clarify, so the lot depth is only 58 feet, but when you look at an aerial and you look at the vegetation, you look at the mean height water line, it does encroach onto the back of that property and really squeezes the back, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there is a lot of vegetation to the left of where this pool will be, looking at the water. If that survived the hurricane, I have no idea, but at that point, there was a nice shielded area through there, and the neighbor at the time Don was looking had said they were in complete agreement. Is that neighbor still there, Don? Is that the same neighbor? Okay.
The house changed hands. Yeah, the house changed hands since,
Okay.
at least since I owned it. But there is a hedge there, and I can tell you from knowing quite a bit about the property next door, because I helped restore from Roma, this would not impede any views or anything like that from that property. In fact, I think the hedge on that property is probably nearly as high or higher than this structure.
Okay. Anybody else have conversation or questions for Sarah? No? Nothing?
Could the LPA just confirm on the record that Sarah's been accepted as an expert in land use planning in the town of Fort Myers Beach?
Do we have to vote?
Just concurrent.
Everyone in favor of her expert ability?
Aye.
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 Thank you. No opposition. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hear from the applicant.
Thank you.
I did not get sworn in, and I apologize, so I thought lawyers normally say isn't taken as facts. In fact, most people don't believe us, but I do have some facts in this case, so
All right.
swear away.
Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right.
There are a
My
couple
name
of
is
just housekeeping matters, just you did receive a copy of the backup material that the LPA received, the packet?
I've been dealing with this case since 2021, but since the last year, it's pretty much been handled by the pool company, which unfortunately, they're not here. So I'm not sure
So
what
the-
backup
the-
information you're referring to.
The material that was included in the agenda, was that provided to you or your
No.
client?
I wasn't provided with anything. I wasn't provided with the report. I got it today from my client.
Okay, but you did receive it today.
I saw
At a
a
minimum.
denial, or recommendation for denial. That's all I've seen.
Okay, but your client does have the entire packet?
I do.
Yeah, okay. Moving on, the ex parte disclosures, did you have any questions of the disclosures that were made as far as the prior ownership or?
No, I try and make it a point not to solicit the boards, but maybe I should change that policy.
Okay, that was it, just as far as housekeeping for the record.
Thank you. We started this process back in 2021, and we were told by the staff at that time that we needed to get a sign-off from the Florida Environmental Protection Agency, which obviously took some time back in 2021. Unfortunately for us, because the statute or the law changed in February of 2021 or 22, it went from a 7.5-foot setback to, I think she referred to it to a 15, then to a 10. So if we'd have got the application in back when we wanted to, it would have been, we wouldn't have had to get the width part of it. We'd have been within the regulations. This house is valued at over $2 million. He's trying to put a first-class pool in, not only to enhance the value of the property, but to enhance the neighborhood. By the way, we did get the EPA's approval to build this pool. They have no issue with it. Obviously, we can't drain the pool. There's some requirements. You can't drain the pool into the back bay and some other things, but sorry about that. But there's, the recommendation I saw was, I think the staff was okay with the length, but they're not okay with the width. But it's only 11, I think it's 11 foot, a little over 11 feet wide, and to narrow it down just doesn't make sense for this piece of property. And the picture we're passing around is this alleyway, this view is exactly where the pool will go. So it's a perfect spot for the pool. They don't want to move it, they don't want it anywhere else, and I'm not sure it can be placed anywhere else other than this area. So, with that all being said, I've been on the beach for 30-some years. I've watched these get approved. I saw one before Ian get approved by the council that was within 10 feet of Stero, which kind of surprised me, but it was approved. I can't find any reasons, and trust me, if I could, I would have advised the client, but we would ask that the approval be granted. They've got the picture. Do you want to give them another one? Oh. Okay. So the applicant is here. He came in. He also had a busy schedule, but he made it a point to be here, and we'd appreciate your approval on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Would you like to say anything, sir?
Well, my name's Todd Plaisted. We'd love your approval on this. I think all the discussion, that we've talked about has already been had by Jane and Don. We started this process and then the rules changed, so we're hoping that you'll take that into consideration when
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there questions for the applicant? Or
I do have one other thing to say. We worked very diligently with staff on this. There was issues with where the equipment was going to be, where the decks were going to be, and he modified all of that. The only thing we can't or don't want to modify, you can always do a modification. I mean, we can put a fiberglass pool up there on top of the ground, but the only thing that seems a little crazy to modify is the actual size. But they did cooperate. we changed this, we changed that. So it's not like we're being uncooperative and we say we want, what is the size of the pool again? 39 by 11, I believe?
Yeah, the interior of the pool, I think, is about 10 and a half feet, so if we were to bring that in, it's only be about.
It's a lap pool.
What's that?
It's a lap pool.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But it's got a sun deck on one side and it's got a spa on the other.
Very good.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you all. Any questions for the applicant or the applicant's representative? Anyone? Don, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Okay.
I have a quick question. Where's the pool equipment? Is that,
Bob, come back. Yeah.
The pool equipment would be basically under the carport,
Okay.
so it'd be away from about 25 feet from the property line.
okay, thank you.
Originally was going to be within the encroachment area.
On the microphone, please.
Because the town didn't like
Bob,
that.
on the microphone, please.
Oh,
Now, you're a
originally-
pro at this. Come on.
Originally, it was going to be within the setback, but then the town didn't like that, so we moved. It was actually like within, but very close, so we moved it. So the neighbors are far enough away anyway, they couldn't hear. But that was one of the accommodations we made initially.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this issue? Seeing none, the public comment is closed. Amy, did you receive any letters or emails or words of inspiration from anyone?
Nothing.
No? Okay, thank you very much. LPA, does somebody have a motion to approve or deny this, or do you have some discussion?
I'll make a recommendation for approval.
Because it meets,
Patrick is making a recommendation for approval.
Yeah, that it meets variance criteria and inclusive of the two conditions by staff.
Thank
I'll
you,
second
Patrick.
that.
There's a
Second.
motion and there's a second. There's 2 seconds, but Jane was first, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Hearing none. Patrick, your vote?
Aye.
Jane?
aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Don Sudduth?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Jim?
Yes.
And me, yes. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Happy holidays to you. Hope you all get your pool soon. Yes. Next item is variance 202-30264 for 5350 Estero Boulevard. This is resolution number 23186, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach approving variance VAR 202-30264 to decrease the required 15-foot side yard setbacks by 8.5 feet to allow 6.5-foot side setbacks for the commercial resort zoned property at 5350 Estero Boulevard, providing for Scribner's errors, severability, providing for an effective date. Patrick, do you have any ex parte?
None.
How about you, Doug?
No, ma'am.
Jane?
None.
Don? Jim?
None.
Scott?
None.
I don't have any either. Has everybody been sworn in who's going to testify in this case? Yes, they have. Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah Probst with Community Development. Applicant Drew Whiting, on behalf of the property owner for 5350 Estero Boulevard, is requesting a variance from Table 34-3 for a commercial resort zoned property. The CR zoning district requires 15-foot side setbacks, and the applicant is requesting a variance of 8.5 feet from both side property lines and asking to provide 6.5-foot side setbacks. The subject property is 45 feet wide by 125 feet deep. Applying the required 15-foot side setbacks would result in a buildable area or buildable width of 15 feet. This property is zoned CR, which requires 15-foot side setbacks and a 10-foot front setback. All of the surrounding properties are zoned residential multifamily, and the applicant is proposing to meet all of the RM zoning district setbacks to create a coherent neighborhood feeling. A 45-foot wide RM zoned lot is required to provide a 6.5-foot side setback, the width proposed by the applicant. Staff is available for any questions you may have, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Are there questions for Sarah on this right now? Hearing none, we'll move on to the applicant. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Tyler Knoffel. Drew Whiting's son has pink eye, so could not make it, and definitely told him to not be around any of us today. That'd be great. I'm the pre-construction project manager for Homebound. The Master family also are off island traveling for the holidays, so it'll be just me here today. As Sarah said, basically as currently zoned, we are required to have 15-foot side setbacks. And on that 45-foot lot, basically only allows us for 15 foot of buildable width. The home that's being proposed is 32 feet wide. And as Sarah said, it feels pretty coherent with the neighborhood. Yeah, if you have any questions you have.
Are there questions for the gentleman? From anyone? We'll call you back up if we have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there any public comment on this case? Seeing none, we'll close that. LPA, questions, comments?
My question would be, isn't there something we should do about properties that are less than 50 feet with a side setback of 100 or 15 feet on each side, so that we don't see all of this again with all the homes that we've lost?
I would imagine that's a bit of an exception to the rule because of the zoning. Most of those lots would either be, RS or RM.
Yeah, this lot is certainly an anomaly. There are very few CR zoned lots in this area. I'm not sure how this one either remained CR or was changed to CR. I'm not clear on how that happened because it is surrounded by RM. So I don't think that you're going to run across this issue very often.
Okay.
Although they could request a rezoning, although that's more expensive and more
Sure.
time consuming than
Certainly.
just requesting the variance.
Certainly.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? If not, may I have a motion, please?
I would make a motion to approve this based on it complies with the requirements and it's consistent with the recommendation of staff. And if they applied for a rezone, they would probably get it. It'd just be a lot of work.
An expense.
Thank you very much, Doug. Is there a second? There's a second by Jane. Is there any further discussion on this?
Madam Chair, did you ask for public comment?
I did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, your motion, your vote, Doug?
Aye.
And Jane?
Aye.
Don Suddeth?
Aye.
Patrick?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Scott?
Aye.
Anita? Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. You do have an anomaly of a lot there. It's a little bit of an odd bird. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays to you as well. Next item, that completes our quasi-judicial efforts here today, and we are on to our administrative agenda. LPA items and reports. Anything, Scott?
Not today, thank you.
How
Happy
about
holidays.
you, Jim? Happy holidays to you, too. Anything for you, Jim?
No report.
Anything for Jane?
Nope.
Doug?
No, ma'am.
Patrick?
Nothing to report, just a question for staff. I think Jane asked at our last meeting if anybody was aware with conditions that led to the light right by Margaritaville, and if anybody was looking into the timing of that light. I've had numerous people comment about it and ask me about it. I know it's a Lee County issue, but is the town coordinating with Lee County?
Wait, I have an addition to that light has Tourette's. I mean, it's wait,
all due
10,
respect.
5, 4. I mean, is there a way we can get that thing turned down? I've got rental properties right there, and all night it's wait. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So unfortunately, DOT is going to take FDOT is going to take the lead on the timing with that regards. But this was brought up yesterday at town council. I really do like that description of having Tourette's. So the town manager has stated that he is going to be working with Margaritaville and FDOT about trying to get a loop particularly at the Crescent entrance or the turn onto Crescent, so that timing can be a little bit more specific. But at this point, we haven't heard anything directly from Margaritaville or from FDOT about when that timing or that loop might actually happen. With that said, it is in the works with management.
Okay. Anything else, Patrick?
No, as just a thank you to a few organizations as a beach parent. The beach school had 2 little events for the kids, one at Margaritaville, so thank you very much to Margaritaville and everybody that was involved in letting the kids use the facility. That was a great event. And also the Beach Kids Foundation also had a gift kind of ceremony with the kids, and fire chief showed up. They showed up at both events. So thank you to everybody. It meant a lot to the kids.
Woohoo! Happy to have it open.
That's wonderful. My item, it's kind of twofold. Sarah and Jason and Amy, I would really like, so this items for next month agenda, could that item be not just informational, but agenda management type items, sort of, so if somebody wants something put on it, like, for example, what I'm going to propose, I really think that we need to have a comprehensive discussion about parking, especially in our downtown core. I've spoken with Nancy, I've spoken with Sarah, I've spoken with a lot of people about this, and it seems like it's just something we need to review. Especially in light of the hurricane and everything that has changed and is changing. Does anybody agree that we should look at this issue in a comprehensive manner?
I agree, Anita. I think when it comes to parking and transportation generally,
In general.
and we're talking about a bunch of different mitigation measures.
Absolutely.
I think to a certain extent, the town has to assume the leadership on those discussions. We have to look at it comprehensively. And obviously, applicants coming in will implement some of those things, but we need a good game plan. That's what we need.
You know, Patrick, you said something, I think well, my last meeting was not my best day, but I made a smart aleck, Jane? I made a smart comment about it wasn't our responsibility to fix somebody's parking problem, and you said, well, the town actually should have some responsibility, and I just kept thinking about it, and I thought, you know what, it really is, it's our job to set the standard, so, you were right, and I just, the more I have thought about it, and the more I look at the shifting of development, and it's not, maybe it's not just our downtown area, but the use of alternative transportation like electric vehicles, like golf carts, all of that stuff, how does that factor in? Bicycles, I just think it's something that it's a core thing. So, Sarah, if we could slate this for some discussion in January, is that possible?
So at not the last council hearing, because that was yesterday, council hearing before that, we had a discussion about parking, and it kind of went around and around. It was about the whale. And it was brought up, I basically suggested several ways that we could look at it. They asked that I move forward with evaluating using ITE, which is International Traffic Engineer Manual, I believe, to determine if our parking quantities are kind of in line with what the standard is. So doing an evaluation of what our requirements are and if they're in line with other communities or if they're way out of whack. And that's sort of the first step that I'm taking, and I'm still working on that evaluation.
So then maybe we don't need to discuss it? It's council's already addressing it, or?
Well, and I think it may be really good for a joint meeting, but I want to get some initial data first to give you an idea of where we are in the range.
I just don't want to put it. It just needs to not be out there in limbo land. It's because it's going to come up and up and up and up and up.
Well, perhaps they could add that as an item to our joint meeting.
There you go.
So Sarah, you're talking about looking at IT, and I'm a little familiar with the manual, and I think generally speaking, what we're going to see is our parking requirements are a little higher than what IT requires. But
Do
I
you
think
know
that
that? Is that?
I've looked at several uses, hotel resort uses. We are higher than what IT recommends. But I think the discussion has to go further. I think it's got to go into, are there downtown districts that we have much reduced parking requirements or no parking requirements? And if we had no parking requirements, do we have a strategy? And that it could either be a physical strategy as to some parking available to the public, or it could be like a parking app, where now you're reducing people driving around looking for a parking spot. They go directly there, and it does reduce some of the congestion, the trips. So I think there's different ways to look at it, but I think the discussion has to go beyond ITE.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
certainly going beyond that, but I wanted to
Okay.
start with a baseline of where we are in the range. But at the last meeting, I brought up parking districts, I
Okay.
brought up a variety of different options that we should be considering,
Okay.
but I just have to know where we are before I can really help
So
guide.
as part of that range, are you going to talk about other municipalities that in some district eliminate parking requirements or different measures?
I'm planning on looking at ITE, but also other communities, and
perfect.
the ones that do the maximum parking, and
Versus any of them.
there are a lot of different ways of looking at this right now.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. LPA attorney items. Anything from you, Nancy?
No items.
Thank you for all your help. Community development items and reports, and now we're going to discuss the development agreements. Patrick, I'm going to let you start this off. Or not let you, I'm going to ask you to, kindly.
Okay. I guess before I get started, I did have some questions for staff. In that I introduced 3 options for development agreements. I provided a handout that's part of your packet today, so everybody's seen it. And what I wasn't clear on is, has staff looked at this? Does staff have any commentary, any opinion? And then we also have language that was provided from the town attorney. I'm not sure what that language is. Is that language that was taken from City of Naples? Or was that crafted?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I think Becky did a compilation of several jurisdictions, and that material is in your packet. It begins on page 219. The first part of it talks about what information would have to be provided to staff in order for them to do their analysis. The second part of it is on page 220, and what that talks about is the actual agreement itself, the required terms. And then the third part begins on page 223, and this is the actual review process of how that would go move forward. And then there's just kind of a administrative component to it on page 225 regarding the execution, the signing of the document, the recording, and then just a little paragraph on the amendment process, as far as if there is a development agreement with deviations that is approved and additional changes are needed subsequent to that, what would be the process for that? And it basically refers back to the process that was identified on page 223. And so I believe that just addressed development agreements with deviation. Patrick's items for discussion somewhat refines that, drilling down to small hotel developments, specifically. Number 2, dealing with site plan with deviations, site plans. And then number 3 being a preliminary conceptual type agreement. So I think they kind of went in different directions, and today I think one of the goals was to try to have a robust discussion in advance of the joint meeting with the town council so that the LPA as a body could have some type of recommendation regarding these two items.
Okay, that helps.
Is that good?
Yeah, that helps because I had presented 3 options, and what's attached there is only addressing one of the options, which is a site plan with deviations, and not addressing the 2 others. And I don't know how in-depth you guys want to get with this, but is our intent to just have a discussion and recommend that we move this forward, or do we want to get into the details as to how this would be applied? In that I looked at what staff provided, and generally speaking, some of the requirements in there I would have hoped could have been streamlined, less onerous on the applicant for the site plan with deviation. So my thought behind the site plan with deviations is when you've got a property, and the Whale was a perfect example, where they need more than one variance, but it's one project, it's 3-4 variances maybe. And obviously, when they look at their options, they could do a planned development, which is costly and time-consuming. We also know that the way we've been handling variances is you have to apply for each variance. You have to fill out all the information to justify each variance. Whereas the site plan with deviations could be quick design, identifying on a graphic, on a site plan, where those, let's say, 2 setback variances are, and providing a general justification that this is good design, it fits in well with the site, and that they are needed for the following reasons, not having to address all the criteria that we have for variance. So it's the intent is to streamline it, facilitate the process, and make it quicker. Some of the requirements that are in here would seem to me they're coming from state statutes for development agreements that could apply to a huge resort. And
These 2 documents seemed in conflict.
yeah, it seems like it would be more work to do the site plan with deviations than it would to do the variances. So while some of the stuff that is in there from the town attorney, I think that would apply very well to this preliminary or conceptual approval for larger projects. They'd still have to go through the PD, but the level of detail makes sense for them. It doesn't make sense for a site plan with deviation in my mind, or it doesn't make sense for a small hotel.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I believe that the procedures that have been developed is holistic. And again, Patrick has broken it down. And if I understand correctly, that because a small hotel or perhaps a site plan would not require the level of detail that is currently in the proposed procedures. I think
Yeah.
that's what you.
And maybe the
Yes.
procedures, if we put for every requirement, we put if applicable. So the applicant go NA, 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 and just answer what is
The
applicable.
other question I had, Patrick, for you is you did preface it by saying your bullet points on your first page, adoption of interim development agreements. Were you anticipating that these would at some point in the future go away? And if that is true, and I'm not saying it is, I'm asking for your opinion, we do have SB 250 as amended, and that has an additional 2-year period. So perhaps
Sunsetting
if you're
it.
saying, if you're saying that they're interim,
Yeah.
then it can kind of go hand in hand with SB 250.
Yeah.
It was
That-
just a thought to
That-
ask you.
That would make sense. The idea
Run
would be,
concurrently with it.
there's a period that's established. It sunsets at the end of that period, and council can always extend it. But I think it provides some certainty. Again, it communicates to the public and the residents that we are streamlining things and adapting to this disaster that we've had. But we also recognize that these are special circumstances, special times, and that we will not necessarily, push that in perpetuity. And again, same thing with applicants. I think it sets the clock for them of, if you do want to take advantage of this streamlined process, do it now.
Do it now.
So the idea is we want to expedite redevelopment, so I think it just sends the right message to have a sunset time on it.
Patrick, can I ask you that one of the things that I really would like defined is small. So you say would only apply to small hotels that were in operation pre-Ian. What is what? I mean, in my mind, I think I know. We always use the Sea Gypsy as the poster child for this, but so that's clearly small. But what about Matanzas? Is that small? What about Holiday Court? Was that small?
So what I was suggesting was I wasn't necessarily addressing what they are today, as to is it
What they were.
what they were, was it 5 rooms, 10 rooms? But I was suggesting that we cap what could be obtained through this process. And what I suggested in there is, what's our cap? Do we say 20 rooms, 25 rooms, 30 rooms? But we would establish an upper limit as to what they can request. So in my mind, small is less than 50, and what, in my mind, it was also 30 or less, was small.
Okay.
One concept would be to base it on impact and demand. So if it was under a certain traffic impact, if it was under a certain water sewer demand, then we would consider that to be a small development, whether it's hotel, motel, whether it's condo, whether it's, whatever use it is. If it's under X, then we can say they can apply for, you don't have to do your traffic impact. You submit a traffic impact statement showing we're below this. You submit your quantities for water demand showing, and then they don't have to do more. That decreases the requirement for staff to get anybody else on, and so it could potentially decrease the amount of time for the review. So that would be simpler on our side, and it would be less of an impact on the surrounding community, theoretically.
Where would you insert those that suggestion, Sarah, under the small hotel development agreement option?
I think that it might actually apply really well to all of these, because at some point we're going to want, if it's over a certain impact, we need to know more details.
You need full review.
We just need more details. You might be, and while I like the preliminary conceptual CPD development agreement, the problem is once it becomes big, then there are a lot of unknowns. And it does become a lot more work on staff's part to determine if it's appropriate, if it works. And then it really is important for, everybody to do a deep dive into whether it's appropriate. So it might apply to all, if you're over 50, whatever we set that level at, for traffic demand, water impact, whatever the impacts are.
And I think you're right, it might apply to the other ones, especially the preliminary conceptual approval. But I think the small hotels, so we go from the point where maybe a small hotel owner could fill out an application himself, and spend very little money on consultants. As soon as you're asking for transportation study and evaluation of impacts to water and sewer, they're hiring engineers and it's costly. so I gave an upper limit of what could be requested. Okay, so if we did adopt, let's say 30, we would know that it was a previously existing hotel or motel of less than 30. Why not establish just a cap of number of rooms or I think that makes it a lot simpler for them. They say, okay, yes, I qualify for this option. I can put in my request. I don't need to hire the consultants. And I'm talking myself out of work here, but
I don't think so.
but the thing is I think it really, it's consistent with the intent of what we're trying to do is make it simpler on them, less costly, and move it along quicker. So I don't know if staff would like to look at what do we consider a minor transportation impact or minor water and sewer impact, and then you guys can, when it goes to the joint meeting, you can maybe come back with that number.
Well, and I guess when I look at the small hotel, I don't necessarily see that as much different than a simple CPD. Like showing the basics. Sometimes you really don't have to go. This community does tend to dive deep, but not all communities do. You can get a CPD approved in other locations, typically not South Florida, but other locations that don't require as in-depth, that you're providing more general in nature, looking at a large resort, there was a large resort development in a county that I lived and worked in, and they did it on a bubble plan, which is, this area is going to have houses, this area is going to be resort, this is where the golf course is. And they basically just figured out the demand and said, we'll work with you on all the individual, they did phases to it. So we knew when things were coming in and we did individual reviews on those phases, but we approved the entire rezoning of the property based on just a bubble plan, generally. So you can.
Is that a real thing, a bubble plan?
Yeah.
It is? I like
Yeah,
the name.
and most of our sites are going to be small enough that won't really be applicable. But just the information that's provided in here, the dots, I think that in a lot of instances we can come up. It's a sketch of the plan. It's how many parking spaces you're going to provide. It's whatever variances you're going to need. It can be pretty general. And then if you say we're underneath this traffic impact, we have capacity and show you have capacity in water and sewer. Okay. Moving forward. We're fine with that, and if it's acceptable, we don't have to go into as much detail necessarily, and it doesn't have to be as intense as it currently is, it seems.
Yeah, but the counter to that is we've had the CPD in place for a long time. Okay. It's not a tool that the small property owner has wanted to utilize or has been utilized. And we've also demonstrated that when people have utilized it, yes, we do get into depth, and yes, it takes a while, and yes, it is expensive. So to me, we have to create a departure from that and create an alternative process.
A hybrid.
Yeah. So that was the intent, because the idea of a CPD light, if I'm the next big resort, I want the CPD light too, So in my mind, you create a different process. If the intent is to streamline it, you create a different tool. So I don't know. I can answer questions associated with the three options that I presented. I don't know if the idea is, do we refine that? Do we just move it forward for a discussion at the joint meeting? The one question I do have for the town attorney is, so state statutes already allow for development agreements for any municipality in the state. Certain municipalities have site plan with deviations. They don't call it they don't call it a development agreement site plan with deviations. Is there a distinction between the statutory site plan with deviations versus if we created these? Because the state does call for certain documents that have to be provided.
Correct. So there is a statutory development agreement,
Mhm.
which is what you're alluding to. However,
Yeah.
local governments do have home rule authority
Mhm.
where they can enter into development agreements that differs from the state statute.
Okay.
And the site plan with deviation process does not have to be through a development agreement. That could be a separate process that you have. It would be somewhat of a variance, no pun intended, a hybrid or a type of variance process that you
Yeah.
have. You could have the traditional variance process. You could have the site plan with deviation process,
Yeah.
which in effect grants additional
And that might be
variance.
cleaner than calling it a development agreement, just site plan with deviations, and what it does is it,
It only relates to the site plan, however.
Yeah.
But I think that the development agreement with deviations goes a little bit further. It's much broader. It would
Yes.
encompass larger developments that
Mhm.
maybe would require additional land use approvals.
yeah.
I have another question for you, Patrick, because this was something that somebody asked me, and I went, how do you, why, is there a reason why we're only talking hotels as opposed to, you know what property I'm going to use? I hope they don't mind, but the Tuna Skin building.
Mhm.
You've got retail and condominiums there. What, that would be in, and under this, if they wanted to redevelop that parcel, it would certainly fall underneath this small notion, but it's not a hotel. So I'm just wondering why we're choosing hotel as opposed to condominium, a small condominium, or any other type of commercial enterprise that might wish to be streamlined. I'm just trying to think of another, well, let's think about the goods. That's just retail, but maybe Graham decides he's going to redevelop that with retail and residential, or retail and, I don't know, whatever. or
So
condos.
the reason is that a commercial property, if they're going to redevelop as commercial, could avail themselves of the site plan with deviations to address their concerns. Typically, when we're talking about, and everybody knows this in this town, if we're talking about density or additional lodging units
Yep.
or height, that's where we get,
Excited.
yes. Those are the controversial issues.
Yep.
Okay? So for most people, I would assume that people would want to have a standard public hearing process, the full Monty associated with anytime we talk about more height or more density. Okay?
You have that in here, right?
The only exception we would make is the small hotels, because through this process, the small hotels could ask for more. But we've made the distinction that a small hotel was existing. The rationale is that they cannot rebuild within current codes and current densities to make it financially viable. So if we want to keep those little hotels in place, if we believe that they benefit the character, the look, and the funkiness of this town, we create a process to facilitate that and help them. If we take, let's use Tuna Skin, and not picking on them.
No.
But let's say their intent would be, we want to add an extra floor,
Mhm.
okay? And we want more density. Well, I think they have every right to apply for that, and they should, if they want it, but we're not, they don't need this process to make them whole. They rebuild their commercial property, stores open, they rebuilt upstairs. If they would have needed setback issues, variances, they could have gone through
I
the
see what
site plan
you're
with
saying.
deviations.
Yep.
But for us to provide, to basically give them additional entitlements, I think
What
that's
if
where
it had
we
been
need to be
demolished?
judicious.
Would you feel the same way? If it, let's say that.
I
it
think
had-
if they would have been demolished, they would have probably come to us and told us, yes, financially, we just can't rebuild what we had. It's going to cost us so much more money to rebuild and meet all the code requirements that we need more square footage or we need more density.
But you wouldn't see them availing themselves of this.
Well, that's where, to me, it's like knowing the property and knowing what it is. I would say, yes, I'd like to facilitate it for them, but I think there's a bunch of commercial properties right now that if we do open it up, they could come in through a streamlined process to say, I want to rebuild a commercial and I want to put 3 floors of condos or lodging units above. And to me, I think that's where those projects might become a little controversial. And the public might be a little reticent to just streamline that process. So again, the idea is the mom and pop hotels that we've had people come forward and ask for relief, that was a way to just get something approved and move that along. I don't think we discard the other one. I think we could keep that in mind for sure. But I just think that becomes where it might be a little more controversial. We might want to be a little careful
Okay.
how we address those.
So let me ask you then, the last question that I've gotten asked is that having to do with owner-operated.
Mhm.
So, historically, we've run into an issue with, Myerside, for example, had an owner-operated clause in their condition that became an issue for them. So how would you foresee a, Scott, I'm going to use the Sea Gypsy again because we've talked about it. So let's say owner-operated by Jackie and Scott right now, but what happens if they were to, would there be some provision that would limit them or preclude them from selling their new little hotel to the Marriott? Or to something, how do you see an enforcement, how would this is a feel-good moment?
So usually though, the big box brands, they don't touch anything under 100 units. I mean, that's kind of,
Maybe that was a bad example, but do you know what I'm saying? It's this notion of we're envisioning these family businesses staying in existence, helping them to move forward after the storm. But how do you implement that? Does that sound like a stupid question to you?
No, I think that becomes a legal mechanism. I think it's more of a question for the town attorney. I think the idea is, it's to prevent speculation.
Okay.
Someone coming in and saying, I'm going to buy this. It's a pure investment. And once I
basis of the question.
get my approval,
Yeah.
I turn it over to
Turn it and flip it.
a Motel 6 or
Yep.
whatever.
Okay.
Probably not the best example, but more of a motel type of chain, because they might be okay with 30 units. I don't know. I just know that a big hotel chain would not be interested in
Yep.
30 units, but maybe
Okay.
a motel would be. So you don't want to create or encourage speculation where people just come in,
Yep.
buy it, get their approval, and then, they're sitting somewhere else and they're just renting it out to an operator.
But let's also not forget that there are franchises that are owned and operated by local business
Yeah.
owners.
Yeah.
So, you can have a franchise, it's under a franchise logo, but it's privately owned.
That's it. I think.
Okay. Well, I certainly appreciate this, and it's clearer to me now, and especially, I think it would be a really good idea to sunset this with SB 250, so that runs, we're showing the state also that our intent is to assist redevelopment of our community, and I think that that's a very positive thing. So, but I agree also that we need to have some clarification on the procedural portion so that we know which, 1, 2, 3, does that apply, like Patrick was suggesting, if applicable? Maybe we could even go further into specifying that, Section 2 is applicable to the small hotel development agreement or the site plan with deviations, just so it's clear.
And also, I think for the town attorney and for staff, some of the items that you've listed on there, I think those you can demonstrate compliance with those at development order. So, again, if we look at the intent behind this is for someone like Scott to get to a yes quickly and evaluate is redevelopment feasible, yes or no. Once they have their yes, they have the confidence to invest the money and get their engineering done. And at engineering and at the development order stage is where they can provide that detail, and they will still have to comply with the requirements. And if they don't meet the requirements, they don't get their DO approval. But at least from an entitlement standpoint, they know what they have in hand moving forward.
If I can, Patrick, since I have the opportunity, maybe you can run through some of the requirements, the
Okay.
ones that you feel would be subject to that kind of give and take, because a couple of these really don't seem to be that onerous. That would be very atypical. So
I can go through those.
Hold on, Patrick, one second.
Yeah.
Jason, I can't see you in back of this thing. Did you have something you wanted to throw in here?
So just a clarification, if I could, from my personal perspective here. When we talk about the third option, the preliminary and conceptual CPD agreements, what sort of rights or vesting is being given with a yay or nay? So if staff says yay in concept there, and maybe this might be a legal question, what is that applicant entitled to if for some reason the plan falls apart or they aren't granted variances or deviations at the CPD process? If they walk away, are we obligated to still owe them anything? Do they have a development agreement that can be protected by the state at a later time? I was looking for a little clarification of what they're owed once they get a yay.
The third option, in my mind, is a lot more consistent with the statutory state-level development agreement that you see in every community. My understanding is a development agreement is a legal contract with a development entity. And correct me if I'm wrong, but
no. However, the way that I have seen these conceptual or preliminary development agreements executed is with an abundance of conditions. And I think Patrick's got a few of them that it does not negate, the full review. And you can't really hold, or I guess perhaps it's debatable as far as future
That's the problem.
elected
right there.
officials, it would
Or
have a
staff.
timeline on it. It just kind of says at this point in time, yeah, this looks good and it looks feasible, and but you still have to do all these things. But that situation could change, and that's why the timing or the timeline or the duration is the better word of that conceptual agreement is important.
I think that the best analogy is if you look at zoning versus a development order. Someone gets their zoning approved.
Perpetual.
But they still have to go in for development order and they still have to demonstrate compliance with the Land Development Code, all proper engineering requirements, Florida Code building requirements. That takes place at a later date, but the zoning's approved. So this approves the project conceptually. They still need to go through the PD process and demonstrate compliance with the comp plan. They still need to demonstrate the compliance with the LDC. They have to request deviations if needed. And the entitlements are there. They've gotten that approved conceptually, but they need to then demonstrate how they comply with the code and the comp plan and how they comply with their development agreement. 'Cause
Patrick,
it-
I understand what Jason's saying, and it's my concern too. So, let's say we've got Jason and Sarah today, but, Jane and I have been around long enough that we know how staff's opinions have changed over the years. So Jason says, gives the Sea Gypsy a tentative yes. In my mind, at least, that's just a recommendation from staff. When they come to the LPA and the council, that's when that is affirmed. So in my mind, to answer Jason's questions, the staff doesn't entitle them to anything.
No.
Are you seeing that differently?
No, you're correct.
Okay, so there's your answer. It doesn't entitle them to anything.
Well-
It's your recommendation, but it's a clearer path.
I don't know if I'm confused here. Staff doesn't give any entitlements, so we're talking about option number 3.
I'm talking about all of them.
Okay, so all of these have to go through public hearing process, okay? So staff just makes a recommendation.
Right.
Staff does not approve or deny a
Right.
project.
So you're not liable for anything. You're saying, hey, Jackie, Scott, we think this is a great plan. And then they still have to take the formal approval steps. But they can't come back and say, correct me if I'm wrong, they can't come back and say, well, the staff said yes, why are you saying no?
Correct.
Okay.
But just I think maybe what Jason was alluding to is if we look at the conceptual approval for a larger resort, okay? So once you've entered into this preliminary conceptual approval, it does grant, and it's been approved by council,
Okay.
it does grant them an entitlement.
Sure,
Okay.
once it gets that approval.
In my mind,
I think it's an entitlement to the terms and conditions,
Yes.
perhaps, of what is in there. However, it's conceptual.
But
You know, it could
I think the question we're getting to, and I'll use specific examples so everybody's clear, is in that conceptual approval, it says X amount of units, okay? So, and it says X height and all these parameters. So when you go to your PD, your CPD, you need to demonstrate compliance with that. And let's say there's a different council, that council has the right to approve your PD or not. But in my mind, they do not have the right to say, we are now going to reduce your density or your height. What you have to do is by the zoning, you need to demonstrate compliance with the contract you've entered into, and you've got to demonstrate compliance with the code and the comp plan, but you're not renegotiating those parameters that were established.
But those parameters that have been negotiated, you're saying are from staff, so then it does make them
No,
liable.
no. You still have to go, all these processes, you have to go through public hearing
Okay,
before the LPA and council.
okay. Got
But
it.
those negotiated items would not negate entitlements or no entitlements that would be provided through other processes. And the other thing that this would have to have is a path forward with some specific timelines. Yes, we conceptually agree to this. It would be great to have that structure there, but it needs to happen. It can't like linger on in perpetuity, so that there would be some strict guidelines, like you need to apply for a rezoning if that's necessary. within this timeframe.
Yes.
And, you know,
And-
very,
And I think
very
on there,
specific.
I think on there, I put for each of them that there's a commitment on their behalf that they must file for a DO within X amount of time and move forward. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think the developer agreement typically is specific to a project and an entity.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily carry with the land. So if that entity decides
Well,
to.
yes and no, because sometimes it does apply to successors and assigns.
Okay.
Especially lenders would want to be able to avail themselves of the terms and conditions of that development agreement in the event of a foreclosure.
Okay, but, so we could, but that would be conditions that could be
Right,
worked
so when you
in.
say entitlement, I would agree with you to an extent to what the terms and conditions are in that preliminary conceptual.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to look at the terms in order to say, yes, that's an entitlement, or no, it's not.
Yeah, okay.
Would it be worth even going one step further, Patrick, and including some, I'm going to call them milestones or marks that have to be hit so that, although that might be complicated, instead of just 18.
I think you can, a development agreement, you can put all those conditions that you want in there. Again, I think it's the applicant has to be, it's got to be a meeting of the minds and agreement that it makes sense for the development entity and for the town. But you can work those in. I've seen development agreements also from, when it comes to density, I've seen them where they're capped at a certain number, and I've seen others that had a density range. So the jurisdiction was granting you conceptually a density between this and this. And that's where the exact number would be arrived at through the zoning process. But they knew what their worst case scenario was.
Okay.
So what you don't have now is you don't have that process in place. I mean, we're a little bit more, I think, into the trees rather than the forest, if I got that correctly. Talking about the terms and conditions of it, but that vehicle right now does not exist. And that is what Patrick is proposing, that
Sure,
that we have an
exactly.
alternative,
That we have an
additional
alternative to
tool
it.
in the toolbox.
Yep.
And just again, to reiterate the three options. So, we talked about what the intent was behind the small hotels. Site plan with deviations, again, is to facilitate when you have multiple variances, make it easier. And, again, I look at, I wish some of those variances that came before us had recommendations from approval on most of them. I don't like that we have a bit of a conflict between what staff recommends and what we approve. So, perfect example today, the Widgeon Terrace one. I believe there was a special condition and kind of something abnormal with that lot. It's only 58 foot deep, which is not really standard for the island. Plus, it's got right-of-way on part of it. And it had mangroves and water line in the back. So, yeah, to me, it's completely unique. So, when we have differences of opinion with staff, I'd rather not have that. And if we have a deviation process where applicant has done a great job of, they've got a difficult site to work with, and they're going to do a great project, and they've justified it, we don't have to hit every single one of those and say yes, yes, yes. We can say, you've, Mr. Applicant, you've done a great job trying to work with what you have, the conditions you have. The design is good, and we fully support it. And again, we're doing this in the interim, and we're doing this to be responsive to all this rebuilding that has to occur. So that's the first option. The second option, and then the third option is really the idea that these larger resorts, the larger projects, we are creating a lot of uncertainty right now for potential sellers, for buyers, or for existing resorts that want to rebuild.
Why are we creating uncertainty?
Because it could potentially cost them $300,000-$400,000 in 12 months to get their note.
But why are we doing that? I mean, I guess I just don't understand what it is. When I say we, I mean the town. What exactly is it that the town is doing to create this hardship? Nothing has changed. I mean, nothing has changed in the processes. So what have we done to create that hardship? I've tried to get this answer. I don't know that.
Well, we've been through a hurricane.
Well, sure.
And we want to streamline the redevelopment process. We want our economy back in action as soon as possible. We also understand that if someone takes a year to get entitlements, they'll probably take another 8 to 10 months to get their development order.
So it's a timeline thing.
And then by the time they start constructing, we're 2, maybe 3 years out.
Yeah.
And it's going to be 2-year build. So we are shortening and we are recovering quicker. And the thing is, we are just letting them know of, yes, we want you in our town. Yes, we want your investment and what you produce for us you've given us your parameters. Yes, we want that. And if the answer is no, well, let's not take a month and then another buyer has to come in, work through their due diligence, take a year to get back to us, and maybe that second applicant is a yes, but now we've created a few extra years.
Okay, I get it.
So I would like to ask the question. There's been 3 proposals or 3 possible additional tools in the toolbox. Does the LPA have any type of ranking as far as if they had to go forward with one as opposed to all 3?
The only clarification I'd like to make is this site plan with deviations. Do we want to call it does it make more sense as a town attorney to just?
It's just a process. I
We
mean,
just site plan with
it
deviations?
doesn't necessarily have to be a development agreement
Okay,
per se.
yeah.
It would be kind of a process, but would that one be if you had to pick among the 3, would that be your first choice? And then what would be your second choice?
Well, my personal opinion is obviously I'd like to see the 3 move forward. I think the first one is us having made this commitment or just, I don't know if it was a commitment, but at least it was a discussion at the LPA and at council of wanting to help the small hotels and wanting to help the mom and pop. So
Agreed.
that one to me is very important. The second one is, I think we will apply the same review as we would through a variance process. It's making it easier and quicker, and it's
Consolidating
also saving staff time.
But what about number 3?
Number 3 is the one that I assume would be a little more itchy or departure from what we have. But again, the idea was what I put in there, I think, provides sufficient safeguards that we are not bifurcating the public hearing process. We are not diminishing the need to work with those projects that get public benefits. We are just getting to yes, we want you in our town and we want your proposed project conceptually quicker. That's what it does.
Okay. Anybody have any input? Hey, is Dawn still on the line?
Dawn, you still there?
Have you got any input on this, Dawn?
Not really. No.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else have any input? Do you, Sarah, Jason, Nancy, feel like you have ample input from us to move this to our joint meeting? No, I can tell by Sarah's face that the answer is no.
What are you looking for from staff?
I would like to know how this process is implemented in our code. So this then, I'm guessing it becomes a process that a developer or property owner has the right to select. And so, and you had mentioned the, I'm going to call it infrastructure impacts. Are there certain thresholds there that, that you'd like to see? Anybody else?
Well, yeah, and I would just say, Sarah, if you can look at establishing that threshold, not through something that would have to be studied, more of it's a number.
Yeah.
You know, so Lee County does a major PD or minor PD. It's based on acreage and based on number of units. You don't have to go do a traffic study or look at your impacts. You just know you're either major or minor.
Do we have a problem with doing something like that rather than coming up with multiple different processes to do just a major and a minor
From
As opposed to
for
this?
CPD?
Yeah.
I would create a different process in the CPD because even if you do a major or minor in Lee County, it's still a year process, and it's still almost all the same information.
Okay.
But I think that would be good information to bring forward to the council. Maybe it's, I don't know. Is it easier to wrap your head around? I don't know. I'm still concerned that it doesn't shorten the timeline for somebody, but maybe it does. Okay, anybody else have any input for staff? Or Sarah, go ahead.
I would say my biggest concern with kind of not having engineers or technical staff involved is you may not know what you can even do. That just not fully understanding you have to do stormwater, you have to, and I know that is those are details that add cost. However, they get the project done. So if you don't have them, you don't necessarily have what you think you have. So giving someone a conceptual approval for something when they don't know how they're handling their stormwater, they don't fully understand how the cars are getting in and out and moving around the site. My concern is, so we have one project that has gotten an RPD and gotten an amendment and gotten an amendment and gotten an amendment and gotten an amendment because they didn't have the details worked out.
They
It's
didn't
fine.
know what they didn't have.
They didn't know, oh, we have to shift the house this many feet. We have to shift this there. The driveway doesn't fit that way. You know, like, so there are all these changes and changes and changes, which is fine. That's on them that, you know, and maybe that's where we end up. But if property owner Joe doesn't know what he doesn't know, he might not even know what he actually needs.
Yeah, but that's kind of, every process we have through zoning is always, that it's the same issue for everything. Like you said, someone can get a PD approved, and then that's why we have the next phase, which is the development order. And sometimes they have to redesign, sometimes they have to go back and ask for more deviations. And some people do it well, some people have their ducks in a row before they get to their DO. Some people don't, but that's on them.
So I guess one of my concerns is regarding the conceptual one. If they get financing based on, I mean, I don't know what they get with the conceptual approval, but if they were to get a conceptual approval from the town, move forward, and then find out that they really can't do what they thought they could do, does that allow somebody to get into a position, and granted, everybody's an adult, they can do it themselves. However, does that sort of enable them to get into a position where they can't do what they thought they could do, and now they're further down the road than they should have been? I just, because of the lack of that technical knowledge that they may have
if you look at the conceptual approval, I don't see anybody doing that without professionals. I haven't seen a development agreement anywhere either that I've worked on or typically it's for larger projects. and they have a team of professionals. So the requirements for that third option would be much greater than the two other options.
Okay, yeah, and that was one of my
Yeah.
concerns. It was unclear what
Right.
What level?
The terms of that agreement would specify what would be the minimum requirement for whatever.
Okay.
So, number 3 is an additional tool, but the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
Because the terms and conditions vary.
Yeah, and they'll vary from project to project. And the example I provided last time is I was involved, the 2 sections of land at the end of Bonita Beach Road that were annexed into the city of Bonita Springs, and then development agreements were put in place as to density you could put in there, but also how much, like 45% of the site was going to be wetlands and restored wetlands and conservation area. And they were going to have to build the public road, extended 2 miles. All these things were spelled out. It wouldn't necessarily apply to every project, but they fully anticipated that, yes, there's going to be a lot of detail in this developer agreement. But what it did is it gave them the confidence to then say, okay, we are going to annex into the city. We're not going to stay in Lee County. We know the city wants us, and now we're going to proceed with significant investment. Whereas before they had that in hand, they were still even debating of, do we go through Lee County? Do we go through the Bonita Springs? And if we go through Bonita Springs, we don't even know until we have a development agreement is, do they even want us in their town? So that's where it does provide some certainty. It does allow you to make investment decisions. They still have to go through, comp plan amendment, rezoning. They have to do all that stuff afterwards.
To the extent that it is so specific, then it no longer really is stuff. You start talking about the allocation of density. I don't think that is really, but that may just be word. But the terms and conditions of what is in the conceptual agreement is critical, and there'll be a lot of conditions on that.
And again, it's an option that we're providing if the developer feels that the amount of information I'm providing here, I might as well go through the PD process right away.
Right.
They've got that option too. But I think instead of 12 months, you can probably get there in 4 months. And I know that
In 4?
I'd rather get there in 4 months rather than 12 any day.
And that is probably, from a policy perspective, a concern shared by the town as well as with the developer. I guess the other question I would have is the joint meeting on the 11th with the town council. I think it was requested by the LPA, and so the LPA is appearing at that meeting to present these 3 additional items for discussion because, Madam Chair, I'm kind of assuming that you'll be opening the meeting in that regard, answering the question, why are we here? Why are we meeting in joint session?
But we'll be prepared for that, Nancy. You, me, and Sarah will be prepared because yeah. Okay. Anything else from anyone? Last item on the agenda is items for next month's agenda, which our joint meeting is at the Town Council's work session on the 11th, and then our regularly scheduled, I don't know exactly, but our regularly scheduled meeting would be on the 9th. Is that correct, Amy?
We want to clarify the time.
Yeah,
of
that's
the
what
joint
Jane was
meeting.
just asking.
In the afternoon? Oh, okay.
Well, you could send us an email.
Yep. One of our council members has to leave by 1 p.m.
Okay.
So they're requesting that it's a morning session. Right now, I'm not sure exactly what's on the MMP session, so I'll let you know closer to the date, though.
Super. Thank you, Amy. And anything else relative to next month's agenda? I'm sure there's going to be a lot, but okay. Ta-da! Nothing else. Everyone, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and thank you for everything you all do. And I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
We're adjourned at 12:25 p.m. Bye-bye.